If there is one retro series I always see getting a bunch of praise, it's TimeSplitters. Now this might be more of a case of players on my side of the pond.
For England. For England, Alec.
And I'm sure there are videos and articles out there claiming that these games weren't all that, but you get my drift.
Hey!
Yeah.
Good luck.
Thanks.
And you can't deny that the first game in the series was a video game-ass video game. This was a natural progression from what came before, and the pedigree behind this franchise is nothing to shake a golden gun at, with the studio behind it, Free Radical, being made up of ex-Rare developers. You know, the guys that took a little license game and made the N64 a must-have. Yeah, Nintendo also did their part, I guess. But for boys growing up in the 90s, GoldenEye was a must-have, especially for sleepovers. I should really get around to doing a video on GoldenEye. Hell, it basically made me a proper James Bond fan.
Beg your pardon? Forgot to knock.
Whether it's playing the campaign or the multiplayer modes, which Nintendo didn't even want packed in, I and many others have endless memories associated with that game, and an unholy number of hours sunk in, especially in the 90s. So, when it came to the PS2, where were players meant to get their next fix of first-person multiplayer action? The genre was very much in its infancy, with id only having given birth to Wolfenstein and Doom not even 10 years prior, and I think Halo was still an RTS at this point. Console generations also used to be a hard reset back in the day, with many people having to trade in everything they owned just to get their next system, or a single game. And this was especially the case jumping from Sony to Nintendo, or even the Microsoft Xbox. That and sometimes consoles would launch with hardly anything to play, and back then you could go months without a new game to choose from. It was a simpler time, when now you have like 100 games dropping on the various marketplaces each week. The sludge never ends. Anyway, the PS2 dropped around the world in the year 2000. With a staggered release, Sony made sure to see in the new millennium with a bang. Sneaking in DVD players into homes across the world, it launched with 29 games overall, the most of any console launch ever. Obviously not counting something like the PS5 or Xbox Series X, with them having access to a bunch of games on the prior generation. And on the PlayStation side now, begrudgingly, even PS1, 2, and even PS3 games now. Say what you will about the PS2 launch lineup, but there's definitely quantity over quality. And I'm going to go out there and plant my flag in the ground by saying TimeSplitters was the best of the bunch. Sure, Tekken Tag is solid, Dead or Alive 2 is jiggly, and Dynasty Warriors has more enemies on the screen than you can shake a stick at, but for me, TimeSplitters stands above the rest. As I've already mentioned, this might be a British thing, because whenever I've met someone that plays games over this side of the world, they've always got something good to say about TimeSplitters. It was just such a staple all the way through the 7th generation.
Hey man, listen, all top left. I was gonna say, reload? I'm on it.
So yeah, personal biases play heavily into my conclusion, and no doubt others think there are better launch games on the PS2. So sound off in the comments below and let me know yours, or just tell me how wrong I am. As for TimeSplitters, it almost didn't even make the launch window, as those in Japan didn't even have access to it when they opened their blue box. Because thanks to interviews with the devs and the legendary Dr. Doke, we know that this game was running up to the wire. This isn't all that uncommon with a bunch of creative endeavours, but it sounds like they were laying down code minutes before discs were being pressed, and the PS2 being delayed a few times helped Free Radical out for sure. Though at first, the devs were meant to be working on another story-based game, Second Sight, a third-person game with a stronger focus on story, which if you look into their history, is something that stands out amongst the rest. However, Doke and the team noticed the gap in the market, with the launch lineup lacking a first-person shooter, in the style of GoldenEye and Perfect Dark. So going to their publisher at the time, Eidos, they pitched, shifting over to TimeSplitters instead, but Eidos declined, and told them to get back on with their work they were assigned. And obviously, they didn't. Doke himself has stated many times that TimeSplitters is a bare-bones shooter, which it is, but those bones will go into making the foundations of greatness in the next two sequels. So after Steve Ellis knocked up an engine in record time, they showed it to Sony. And this takes guts, with Free Radical not even having released the game yet. Sure, they had an impressive resume, but you have to credit them with the risk here, circumventing the man for a much more larger, powerful man with all the capital to play with. And well, what Sony wants, Eidos had to deliver. Then, Eidos even got upset with Free Radical for adding a map maker, and if you take into account the dev time and the hardware it's being launched on, this is an impressive achievement, and the map maker would go on to become a staple of the series. It's not really till the end of a console generation that devs managed to squeeze every last little bit out of a console. Just look at Naughty Dog for a moment, look at Uncharted 1 and The Last of Us. It's night and day. For so long we've lived in a cruel, time-splitterless world, with the series fading into memory as it was locked to older hardware. Yeah, you can play it on back and pat on Xbox, but over on PlayStation, they felt like forgotten games. And I'm sure people held onto their PS2 copies, and some can even emulate this game, but that's a small group of people that's going to go to those lengths. And then it was a slap in the face after TimeSplitters 4 and Revival were cancelled, with the studio being killed off again by the Embrace Group after they revived it. There's also that Rewind project going on in the background, but it seems like that's been going forever now. With TimeSplitters being killed off for a second time, that seemed like it was it. When on a random day in August of 2024, all 3 games dropped on the PSN Marketplace, which was especially big for TimeSplitters 1, as that game was never ported off the PS2. Trophyless, I still played them anyway, but come September, trophies are finally added. So as I've done in the past, I'm going to take a look back at these games, in a pseudo-retrospective way, recounting what it was like to get the platinum, and well, spoilers, some of those challenges can do one. If you could help a lad out, throw me a like or a sub. Anyway, I'm Ben Roy, and join me as I take a deep dive into the game that started it all, TimeSplitters. The list consists of 10 bronze trophies, 0 silver trophies, and 10 gold trophies. So it's got a very unconventional set of trophies. But I'm always fascinated how devs can fit something that didn't exist until the 5th generation into an older game like this. Like at one point, it felt like devs had all but given up, or were begrudgingly adding them to the PS2 classics, with them not even including platinums. Not that every game I play needs to have a platinum, but it sure would have meant I would have played that classic version of Max Payne or Star Wars Bounty Hunter a lot more, even if that version of Max Payne wasn't the best. But I guess it's being replaced soon, and Bounty Hunter, well, already has been. That has a platinum, so things work out, I guess. Then jumping forward to when PlayStation Classics started to drop on the PSN Marketplace once again. It was a crapshoot whether they'd have trophies or not. You'd think this impacted the sales somewhat as well. Then again, a lot of those New Age classics are getting, or have gotten a trophy list. And I really want to meet the guy whose job it was to add trophies retroactively to Toy Story 2 Buzz Lightyear to the Rescue. Not only is this a wildly random game to put on sale again, but the delayed trophy list is just so fascinating to me. Who sat there and decided this game didn't need trophies, and then just changed their mind and put them in? Whoever it was, they deserve a pint. And now maybe this guy could go and add trophies to the Phantom Menace game to really make the world a better place. Anyway, once TimeSplitters got a trophy list, this meant I was more compelled to play it again, in a deeper way, one I haven't since this game span around on my PS2, which is both a blessing and a curse. Playing each level to completion, on normal or higher, will net the player a trophy. These are bare bones tasks at the end of the day, but as Dr. Doak said himself, this was a multiplayer game first, in the vein of the games they've made before, for Nintendo, so no shade there. Beating any of these story levels, if you can call them that, with full health, will pop a gold trophy. And this can be a little chaotic, because the formula here is, get to the end of the level, grab the MacGuffin, and then do a 180 back to the red circle, all whilst TimeSplitters are spawning in. They literally spawn all over the place. But this is very doable for sure, especially if you leave a health kit at the beginning of the level. Just creating a map will also award a bronze, forcing us all to take a look at that mode, if not for a few minutes. And you've got to appreciate this mode for the time, because to cram this into a PS2 game at the time would take some real man hours. And by the time we got to Future Perfect, this would become a real staple of the TimeSplitters experience. But the real meat of this trophy list are the challenge trophies, and where real platinum hunters will be spending most of their time. With challenges being broken up into sections 1 to 9, A to C, with C unlocking the bronze trophy, with C unlocking once A and B have been beaten. Make sense? These really squeeze every last pixel out of this first game, and make sure players won't steamroll their way to the platinum in just a few hours, even with the rewind feature baked into newer PSN classics. And I'd just like to say, fuck that turret section in 9C. But first, I'll take a look at the levels before I get to that war crime. There's not really a story to speak of when it comes to the first TimeSplitters, with challenges getting more of a description of what's going on in the menus. The light premise for this game, and eventually the overall series, is humanity is engaged in a war against the titular enemy, the TimeSplitters.
I'm going in!
And by using time crystals, they are causing havoc throughout human history. But as this game doesn't really have crystals, and mainly more MacGuffins than anything else, I'm just going to retroactively throw it in there, as it basically becomes the core of the franchise. Without a lead protagonist, the player gets to choose between one of two characters, a male or a female, as they attempt to foil the TimeSplitters' plan before it ever happens. And now, it's time to get to the levels. Straight up, the game gets off to a good start, because how could you say no to a little ancient Egypt action? Well, in this case it isn't quite ancient Egypt, with it being something more akin to the Mummy. And I'm talking about the Brendan Fraser one, not the original, or that weird Dark Universe one with Tom Cruise in it, which was basically a Mission Impossible film, with a different skin on it if you're being honest. The Mummy also came out in 1999, around the early time of the dev cycle, so I'm just going to roll with this one, and assume that devs took inspiration from that film, and if not, it's my own little headcanon anyway. Captain Ash and Lady Jane are the choices to pick from here. Now, I won't run down every character in the game because they're basically skins, but one of them here is a bit more notable for, well, many reasons. One being that he's an outright legend, and he might get a little too horny on a mission, but that's Captain Ashfear. One of the only characters to show up in all 3 games, Captain Ash is always my go-to when available. Oh, and fun fact, Captain Ash managed to slip one by the goalie. Like anyone who tries to avoid being gouged by drink prices at a venue, the ESRB missed what his flask actually contained, thinking that because he's an explorer, this was water, when no, Ash had some of the good stuff in there, all for a little Dutch courage.
Cheers!
Starting off, Captain Ash has a Mauser pistol to hand, and will quickly come across a blunderbuss. And already this is a solid choice, because how often do you get to use a blunderbuss in, well, any other game? The thing looks comical enough, and should be in more games. And this is only one example of the devs using this time travel premise to their advantage, because why not mix the weapons up whenever you can? TimeSplitters also doesn't hold back for anyone playing on normal, or above. You're in the action fast, and you've got to keep moving. And now this might not be as bad as something like Doom, but it's something in between, as you'll need to keep popping between nearby cover, or pickups if you want to stay alive. And for this game, the devs opted not to have an aiming reticle, for the most part anyway, with instead them choosing to keep to auto aim for now. So far, so very GoldenEye. Then holding down the aim button, players can go for a more refined shot, which will be essential later, which is probably more of a force of habit back then. As well as the extremely limited death time, as well as the fact that dual analog sticks hadn't really been around for that long, as they were made standard with the PS2. Yes, the PS1 eventually got a DualShock, but this was more of an opt-in feature back then. And on that controller, you could turn off the analog stick for some reason. D-pad movement used to be king, and well, just look at that N64 controller. The tomb itself feels like an extension of the Aztec level from GoldenEye. You know, the bonus one you got after beating the game? With it being riddled with tight walkways, sharp corners and pillars. Also the goons could hide behind, before they jump out and attack. And when playing this game in the past year, I've noticed how refined the animations still look. Like sure they're all canned, like the death animations, but it's leagues ahead of what was possible just a few years prior. Explosive crates are back, as it was the style of the time, but these don't get quite as crazy as GoldenEye. Not too far in, the game will start spawning mummy-looking zombies that require headshots to get an effective kill, and then a little further on, you'll see actual mummies. You can wing it here, but a little later on, stopping to shoot their heads off is a must. Before finding the objective, the Colt pistol and Tommy gun can also be found, and are essential for a speedy escape, because it won't be too long before Ash has to get the hell out of there, as finding this level's equivalent of the time crystal will cause splitters to spawn. For longer and more complex levels like Tomb, this can become a real clusterfuck. And a race to the finish. Reaching the rudimentary circle at the end of the level goes to show how bare bones TimeSplitters can be. We don't necessarily need the finish of the level to be all flashy, but it just looks like a circle. There's no portal like in later games, and really, this just looks like an asset that was meant to be replaced. The health bar and aiming reticle are also a bit basic, but frankly once you get into the game, it doesn't matter all that much, and it gets the job done. Now for the second level, or should I say map in the story. This is actually a mainstay for the series, with it being one of the only maps to show up in every TimeSplitters game. Yes, it has a few tweaks along the way, but it's still essentially the same map, resembling a restaurant that you might see in a Hong Kong shootout, or even stumble into yourself off the high street. It has a significant feature that plays into challenges all throughout the series, and that is breaking shit. Whilst Chinese features in every game, it does change slightly throughout, but one aspect that remains is the big old gong.
Ship aside.
Shame you can't use it for cover like Indiana Jones did that one time. Starting with a pistol and more importantly an Uzi, it feels like the devs really wanted the player to live out those classic Hong Kong style shootouts. And for the time, this level did successfully emulate that, as bullets come at Harry Tipper in almost every direction, and that's thanks in part to the massive windows littered throughout the level. And speaking of Tipper, like Ash, he's one of the only characters to be in all 3 TimeSplitters games, with them both getting more refined characters in Future Perfect. Sometimes I daydream about what TimeSplitters 4 could be. How we could have Captain Ash and Harry Tipper meet for the first time. Fuck it. Bring all the characters in for one last showdown. Even Mary Beth Casey. The Embracer group really fucked up when they closed down Free Radical for a second time.
Do the thing.
With gangsters, thugs and chefs around every turn, the M16 will come in handy when trying to shoot from a distance. Or spraying and praying, that works too, because of course, the bots have unmatched accuracy. That or closing the gap with a double-barreled shotgun is a viable way to go, and don't be fooled by the size of this boomstick either. It may look small, but just like Yoda in the prequels, it packs a punch, and it's perfect for zombies later in the story, though it has one aspect that online players would almost certainly complain about today, because this shotgun has incredible range. Just look at it. This level is much more open, which normally would come as a relief, but this means there's lines of sight everywhere as I've already mentioned, above and below. It's also much brighter than Tomb, so already a nice change of pace. Once getting to the kitchen, the cooks are going to want to have a go. Maybe this is all just to protect the abundance of crockery they've got laying about, or the drugs and cash downstairs. I wonder which one, though taking these chefs out will give Tipper a chance to dual wield. Down in the basement, it's a mad dash to get the bag and get out, because as you've guessed it, the TimeSplitters are back. And these look different in every game, and eventually look more believable as an alien species that could take out the human race. But here, they just look like emaciated dudes, with burned bacon bits slapped all over them. They also don't have their trademark lightning just yet. Instead, they fire green bolts at the player. Again basic, but it gets the job done for the time being. Unfortunately here, and in multiplayer, holding the bag means you can't dual wield. But it makes sense, I guess. This just means that Tipper's gonna have to focus on accuracy, rather than the hot chick he's got lined up after the mission, as he makes it to the red circle of safety. Next, we travel to the not too distant future of 2005. For the time anyway. Christ, at the time of writing, that was 20 years ago now. For some reason, this feels like a Chastity Detroit mission.
No problem.
Old Deacon Swain can have the bench on this one. Now, as this was the future for the year 2000. And this of course means we get a sci-fi handgun, because this was the future. Still waiting on those flying cars though. Cyberden is an unholy marriage of Tomb and Chinese. It's claustrophobic like Tomb, and bright in spots like Chinese, with some verticality thrown in for good measure. It also feels like those cyborg bastards never stop coming. They force the player to keep moving, but at a cautious pace. Stray too far too quickly, and enemies can come at you from both ends, and once they're in front and behind, it's going to be hard to survive. There are proximity mines to hand. You could use them to stop enemies from sneaking up, but they don't last all that long, so you might as well just not bother with them. So it's best to just hoof it. That is until the minigun and rocket launcher come into play. Then it feels like you can even the scales a bit, as you mow down hordes of cyborg goons, even when they are well dressed. However, make sure you watch out for turrets, as they're littered through the level. These, along with the aesthetic of an underground military base, just go to remind me of both bunker missions in GoldenEye. Exposed rock and concrete pillars line the corridors, before coming to more of a built-out section. Now, I'm not saying Free Radical were copying their own homework. At the base of a rocket is where the disc can be found. At the risk of repeating myself, you best like it, but be sure to keep a mental note of every twist and turn taken, as after a while this level can feel like a bit of a maze, or even a labyrinth. It all looks a bit samey after a while, and I definitely got lost on more than one occasion, which can be a death sentence when TimeSplitters are spawning in, as well as if any goons are still hanging about. As for the next level known as Village, the game opens up a little bit again. Well, in the sense there's a skybox anyway. And I don't know if it's just me, but I always felt the Doctor and the Deer was most qualified for this mission. Maybe it's because she oozes early 2000s character design, back when video games were more of a creative endeavour, and there wasn't that whole design by committee thing going on. In the AAA space anyway. Starting things off with a Mauser pistol, and the trusted shotgun. It isn't quite clear what the devs were going for in this level. Doubly so when looking at the two playable characters. But once you get a closer look at the enemies in the village, this clears things up. Some sort of infection or demonic possession has riddled through the village, and now it's full of demon-looking bastards that need to be put down. With a single main street, village is shorter and smaller than most levels, but thanks to its many windows, alleys and doorways, this becomes a maze filled with lead. You wouldn't expect enemies like this to be able to coordinate to the level they do, but if there isn't someone shooting from a window, then there'll be another fuck just waiting to jump around the corner. Village is filled with dead ends, but there is one significant cut through, which comes in handy later. Oh, and the local Swan Inn also has a basement, but the only thing down there is a zombie punk. Rush into the pier, hopefully with a Tommy gun in hand. This is where the level would end on easy, as the objective in every level is basically grab the time crystal, or whatever the MacGuffin may be, and get back to the red circle of safety. Though playing on normal shakes us up a bit, and this is an element of TimeSplitters that would only go on to be expanded with later games. And what I mean by that is each difficulty level has more to it than just cranking up the damage and health of enemies, or the removal of health and ammo. Like the team at Rare did before, here I go again referencing GoldenEye, but you can just see the DNA of that game all over this. Every time the difficulty level is increased, more objectives are added. This will be fully reintroduced by TimeSplitters too, but in the first entry, we simply get a shifting of the objective for now, on a few levels anyway. And I've chosen to bring it up in the village level because this feels like the most significant change, because it forces the player to leave the village and take a stroll down the coastline. This means it won't be a simple 180 turn back through the cut through to the red circle of safety. Not that it ever makes a difference, but for Chemical Plant, it always seems like Red Velvet was the way to go.
What do you think of this boner I got?
Oh.
One look at her and I'm off.
Mixing it up once again, Free Radical chose verticality as the main feature for this level, with many walkways being out of reach at the start. The plant requires the player to split their attention between the enemies above and in front of them, because this level has its fair share of enemies trying to kill you from above. Juggling your attention between the two, as well as making sure that manual aim is now mastered. This level could be beaten with a pistol, God forbid, even the shotgun, though there's another option that should be taken up, and that's of course the sniper, which for a game that really doesn't have much going on in terms of story, or narrative or anything like that, Chemical Plant really boosts the variety once again, because up until this point, we really haven't had a level that's had this much distance or verticality to it. So it's a good one to flex with a sniper, and it's really one of the only levels that the sniper gets the shine. But I don't know, man, whenever I play this level, all I see is bloody barrels, and then think about those last few that are just a ball ache to find. Though in story mode, this is deceptively short and sweet, and it makes for a decent sniper shooting gallery. But I feel like this level was made for multiplayer first, and probably well, most levels in this game were, because it's a multiplayer shooter first after all, and it really does shake up the variety in split screen sessions. Though on story mode, once the bag is grabbed, it's only a quick drop down before the TimeSplitters bundle you. Now I don't need to say anything about the character choices here. This is peak Attitude Era attire, and if you know, you know.
One look at her and I'm off.
So go ahead and try that.
What the hell is this?
But yes, I main Angela Perez. Shame she doesn't come with that hover scooter thing though. Now on Planet X, in the year of 2020 of all years, it's a map that's rightly given me PTSD. But don't worry, I'll get to that nightmare turret section in due course. Starting with a sci-fi auto rifle and sniper respectively. This map starts way open, before you go into the caves, and is probably the most open area of the whole game. This level also kicks off by a certain turret section, but the turret's not there just yet. And honestly, it's best to get out of the open fast, and jump into the caves, because these bug-looking alien gits only feel like they miss occasionally on purpose, as it feels like they go for the tried and trusted hit scan method. It also doesn't help that they teleport in all over the place, much like the TimeSplitters. Kindly enough, they drop the ray gun and carbine variant, which is always a welcome shake-up to the contemporary weapons, and those are the past. But honestly, most of the guns feel the same in this entry. And what I mean by that is, all the shotguns act like a shotgun, most of the pistols feel the same, a bunch of the machine guns all handle the same, and the snipers are basically identical. This would be something that goes to change throughout the series, but here, it's all a bit basic. And I know I keep going back to that word basic, but you have to give it to the devs here. Again, they had an insanely tight window to get TimeSplitters out, and they did the best of what they had. Sure, a lot of these weapons are just reskins of the same type, but at least they got a bunch of maps and game types down, crossing over a few tumultuous bridges, and a winding cave network will lead down to the base, and this level's crystal replacement, a big old brain. Grabbing this will unlock a door and grant access to the sacred circle. Sorry Peekaboo Jones, but you already know I'm going with Mary Beth Casey for this run. Though at this point I just wonder if those at Free Radical just made women models they fancied, and then crammed their busty figures into every level they could. But you won't catch me complaining. And is this really what you'd wear to a mansion filled with zombies in 1965? Well, I guess it is now. Straight away this level does not mess around, with it spawning 2 bloody zombies ahead of the player. Thankfully the devs graced us with a shotgun, but this is the first level to heavily focus on this enemy type. and it might be a bit unclear on how you dispatch them. That is if you've never seen them on the silver screen or TV before.
What do you mean, zombies?
Zombies. You know, undead flesh-eating creatures of the night. From the graveyard the house is built on.
You can shoot at them anywhere and they'll eventually go down, but they'll just keep getting back up, again and again. And this must have been a deliberate choice by Doak and the gang, because if you simply just shoot, like most players would up until now, well, the intended shot hits center mass, which, as I've just said, is useless in this level, and wastes precious ammo. That is unless the player wants a zombie conga line following them around the mansion. Aiming without moving will now prompt the gun to aim up just slightly, which is perfect for those who need help blasting off some heads. The drawback is, it can slow the player down, leaving them open to attack, but it's a nice fallback if needed. Going through the cellar now introduces enemies that shoot too, and a throwback to what feels like the tomb level, and the whole spawning in enemy mechanic feels like it really ramps up here, with zombies just brazenly spawning in front of the player. And if that already wasn't a cheap trick, the devs tie spawning in enemies to a bunch of pickups, so you'll either take your lumps, or remember this on the next go round.
Zombies, man. They creep me out.
Climbing out of the basement, TimeSplitters doesn't hold back at this point, with shotgun enemies lurking around every corner, whilst zombies continue to crawl out the cracks. And now moosehead turrets are sprinkled about, for good measure. Oh, and just as the icing on this festering zombie cake, if you're going down some of the enemies that shoot at you, they just get back up and then just start acting like zombies. This all might seem like a complaint, but it isn't. Sometimes we need a level to kick our ass once in a while, just to make sure we aren't getting all soft in our old age. As players back when this game was new, I really feel in their age now. I do appreciate the main hall of the mansion though. It gives off Spencer Mansion vibes from the first Resident Evil, before it was all spookied up with a remake.
What is this place? Not quite your ordinary house, that's for sure.
Just be ready for enemy spawns to take the piss after this, especially when you grab the bag of bones, as a pair of ladies are going to spawn in to greet you. And definitely make sure there isn't a train of the undead still following you once you grab the bag, because that mix of the TimeSplitters spawning in is just hell, and it may want to legit make you hang yourself as you drop to the red circle. Olga Strong is next up to tackle the docks. Sorry mate. And this is a striking resemblance to another GoldenEye level, the depot. It could be seen as a bit of a stretch, but shipping containers and similar buildings just give off that vibe. That Free Radical were going back to what they knew for this penultimate level. And you gotta do what you gotta do when you're up against crunch. Starting off with a sniper and pistol, it'd be essential to learn the enemy placement here, as a bunch of sneaky fucks are lurking up above in the rafters. Almost as if we're being watched by Sting, but with 1,000 rounds to play with. That and the enemies have now got grenade happy. Almost as if we were playing Call of Duty World at War, on veteran mode, and I still have nightmares about that campaign. The method for docks really feels like a repeat of the mansion, minus the zombies, and on a grander scale. Instead of those tight turns and hauls, it's now about spotting enemies up in the shipping cranes. And fuck, I swear I never found them all. I just powered through. It also doesn't help that I got lost while doing this. Before being shot by turrets and waves upon waves of guards, inside the buildings, it isn't even a little less hectic. Just when you'd like a bit of a rest, the combat shotgun is brought into play. Modelled after the Spaz 12, it does the trick on the remaining guards. Well, that is before the TimeSplitters flood in, just on cue. Reaching the red circle in this one takes some work for sure. Now at the final level, there's just one last story trophy to get, so who better to pop it than Gretel? I mean, she's on most of the box art, and R108 looks like he's having a decent nap. The Speedway 2035 level gives off those 60s sci-fi vibes. Everything is vibrant, colourful, and mostly idyllic. Well, that's until Gretel gets going, and most of the enemies spawn in straight away. And without a care in the world, literally they have no self-preservation. And while this level might have more objects and scenery built up than any other, none really supply ample cover for the scramble to the rocket, with groups of 4 dropping in like they were splitting through time. If I didn't already know better, I'd say this final level had an AI director, similar to that of Left 4 Dead. I don't know man, some of the spawn points are just real nasty. Some of the placements of the enemies here feel like the devs are really trying to slip the player up. And there are even some that hide around the corner like they're in a Souls-like. And no, I'm not saying TimeSplitters is the Dark Souls of shooters. I know that's an analogy that's being driven into the dirt by now. But some of these enemies are real sneaky fuck. Right up until the moment the bag's been grabbed, it feels like you're already fighting TimeSplitters, because these enemies are brutal, and the latter part of their level is littered with turrets, so it's best to take as many of them out before triggering the party. Sticking with the minigun on this level saved me for sure, even if there are 1 or 2 sneaky turrets before the final red circle. And just like that, time and space have been saved. For now at least. Now take anything I've mentioned about the bare bones story mode and put it aside, because this is where I guess a lot of players have put this game down. Or shift over to the multiplayer component. You know what got TimeSplitters the green light in the first place? But for those after the Covenant Platinum trophy, well, get used to the challenge mode, because this will take up the bulk of any player's time. Kicking off with 1A, Behead the Undead. This mode just doesn't fuck around, with it requiring the player to knock off 50 zombie heads in 2 minutes. This might sound easy, but you have a go and see how you do. Armed only with a shotgun, this mode crams Harry Tipper into the main hall of the mansion, along with an ever-increasing number of the undead. Leaving the main hall isn't advised, simply because you won't have enough time to knock off that many heads if you do. It's a ruthless way to start off challenge mode. And honestly, something I don't remember being so brutal. But back when I got my copy, I was still a young kid, so I had all the time in the world to grind this one out. This challenge forces the player into a constant aggressive retreat, and kiting zombies around to avoid being slapped into next week. Death isn't the end, but it sure wastes precious seconds. So if you die, you better have hit and restart. And I beat this one with barely any seconds to spare. And I have to admit, I did rage quit and come back the next day. You know, the vintage sleep on it technique. 1B putrid punch out, it's more of the same, but without a gun. As the name hints, this means Harry Tipper's gonna have to punch the heads off the undead. And honestly, it's far easier than the past challenge. You just need to spin around and punch until you make Muhammad Ali proud. The final challenge in section 1 is actually an early take on Horde mode gameplay. It even has rounds to it. I wonder if those at Free Radical pinched themselves for not making this a bigger feature, as Horde mode exploded during the 7th generation of consoles. When TimeSplitters was on a break, and Haze was the big new thing, right? It crept into every game at the time, just like Battle Royale would in the 8th generation. With there being no time limit, this was actually a breeze, to the point where I just killed myself after a while, because I had the points needed, so it's time to move on. Another frantic challenge is 2A, Flock Around the Dock, which requires Mr. Big to kill 100 Duckman Drakes in under 5 minutes.
Hey, I'm a busy man.
This is another one that can feel like pot luck, as the ducks spawn randomly, and there's no real pattern to it, so there isn't always a guarantee that there'll be plenty to harvest. But really, you just need to grab those Uzis and get dual wielding as quickly as possible. I'm sure these were playtested into the ground though, because like with Behead the Undead, I beat this challenge with hardly any time to spare. Actually, looking back, I had 1 second to spare. That's some action movie level scripting right there. 2B Dock Duck Shoot is an escalation of the prior challenge, and what will be the theme here really. This time, the ducks shoot back. Oh, and there are aliens this time as well. So have fun with that, Mr. Big. But the final challenge is a fair mix-up. It still uses the same level, but this time Mr. Big has to guide a duckman to the red circle. It's nothing too difficult, but I wish this duck would get a move on. And this will finally pop the Section 2 challenge trophy. Section 3 is all about getting that bag. Literally. 1C Tin Man Trial is about getting a bag in a tag match, with a bunch of bots in the background shooting each other. A little less creative than what's been featured so far, but playing as Robofish, a goldfish in its bowl mounted on a robot's body, that never gets old. 2C is more bag tag, but this time with a lobster. And now we shift over to Village. Taking that cut through and utilising dual M16s, we'll sort things out. 3C takes a turn, however. Bowl them over is another challenge focused around shooting off heads, rather than more bag action. This time the enemies aren't mindless zombies, as they're mutants that can shoot back. But luckily for me, I found one spot near the health and just camped out there, which made Section 3 the easiest to beat so far. And there was another trophy. The 4th section isn't all that much challenging either. It's more of a test of patience, as these 3 can get real tedious, with all 3 challenges revolving around breaking shit. 4A, Shame If Something Got Broken, was all about breaking glass, with dual-wielded miniguns, so that should be fun, right? Well, not really. 4B Don't Wait Around is similar, but in the Chinese level. The 3rd one though, this is where it gets annoying. 4C Brick Flung High is 4B again, but this time with bricks. So that means you have to go around breaking every pane of glass, every window, and every plate until Section 4 is beaten. And that trophy finally pops. Trust me, this one is straight up a little bit boring. It also doesn't help that on the first go around, you're missing 1 pane of glass or 1 bloody plate. Mary Beth Casey gets her time to shine in Section 5. Kind of, as she seeks to impress the king. 5A First Impressions is straight up a team deathmatch, and so is 5B Lasting Impressions. But more kills are required, and the king can't die. Though 5C, who's he trying to impress, shakes things up a little. The king has to get most of the kills without dying. Scoring more than 3 kills will trigger a game over, so get ready to be a human shield to earn that Section 5 trophy. The 6th section starts off simple enough, with 6A Barrel Blast being all about destroying barrels filled with toxic waste, at the chemical plant no less, within 6 minutes. Just be sure to look for those few barrels that are hidden away. 6B Bodyguard is still at the chemical plant, but it's time for an escort mission now.
Okay, sir.
This time Christine Malone will be the one walking at a snail's pace, whilst being shot at. Now TimeSplitters 1 definitely wasn't the first game I played that had an escort mission. I think that was the Phantom Menace on PS1, when I stepped on Queen Amidala's dress.
You're stepping on my dress.
But this game has some of the more basic. At least Christine doesn't complain like Ashley when she's being shot at though.
How rude!
6C Heist is by far the more interesting of Section 6. Taking place on a fresh map, the player has to stand on a ledge opposite the bank and try and put a stop to a bank heist, with the goal being not to lose more than 5 bags. This is a difficulty spike after a few bland challenges, though holding off the ragtag robbery will pop the Section 6 trophy. Section 7 sees the debut of one of the more legendary multiplayer characters in the series, the Gingerbread Man.
Hey!
Though he doesn't quite have an attitude just yet, like he would in Future Perfect.
Bite my crunchy brown ass.
In 7A Shop to Your Drop, it's time for a speedrun version to capture the bag, taking said bag from one side of the shop to the other, and then through the checkout. If anything, at least it's an interesting twist in the formula, with bots on 3 teams trying to cram their way to the nearest bag. It's like supermarket sweep to the death.
And they won't be using that one on the show, will they? Well, cut that bit out.
7B Sorry Was That Your Bag is just a freeway capture the bag in the mall. It's no Shop to Your Drop, but it simulates what it'd be like playing with your friends at home. So does that. But back then a lot of us had tiny 12-inch TVs split into 4, and now I'm playing this on a 65-inch OLED. How did we even see those tiny little boxes back when we were young? 7C Everything Must Go is another freeway match. But this time, it isn't about collecting a bag. This is a straight up team deathmatch. Getting 45 kills or more before the time runs out will pop the Section 7 trophy. Section 8 is where this mode starts to feel like a bit of filler, because the gimmick is simple here. It's girls versus boys, on different modes and on different maps.
Yeah. Okay.
8A Girls and Boys, 8B Dinner Dates, and 8C Bone Grab are more of the same, but they pop the Section 8 trophy at least, and thankfully 8C Bone Grabs is on a different map. So that's the one good thing for Section 8, though this doesn't prepare anyone for what's next. The final section really mixes things up, as it's quite a difficulty spike out of nowhere. Now this should be expected, as it's based around fighting the TimeSplitters, and it's a fun reference if you know.
Get away from her, you bitch!
With 9A, I can't hear anyone screaming. Set on the spaceship map, this almost feels like it could be one of the last levels in TimeSplitters, as so far the story has been a bunch of multiplayer maps stitched together, and it kinda makes sense that the TimeSplitters have a craft, or a base of operations. Finding these bastards will give you the most trouble though, as after a while, their spawns tend to favour the upper deck, and it can be a little tricky to locate. And with 9B flight delay, it's time for one last escort mission, but with a few tweaks, because of course you're fighting the TimeSplitters once again. Really this could have been or should have been a level in the game. As in my headcanon, this could be the penultimate level in the game, as you guide someone to the rocket before you fly to the TimeSplitter ship, or even Planet X. This is my personal headcanon now. But here we are, the final challenge, 9C. Space Vandals resemble something more than just grabbing a bag. So yeah, I'm gonna say this is where the rocket crashed, on the way to the TimeSplitter's craft, or something like that. How does it play though? Well, like absolute arse if you ask me. Bringing in a turret section on the final challenge is very 2000s, as TimeSplitters try to destroy crystals that surround the turret. There's no winning this either, it's more of a hold off until the very last moment, a last stand if you will. So I'm gonna say this is why Cortez doesn't feature just yet. Again in my headcanon, he picks up from where these heroes left off, in their great sacrifice against the TimeSplitters.
Yeah, it's time to split.
Right, whatever.
As on Planet X, they fought to the very end. But honestly, I really hated this one. The TimeSplitters often stand out of reach, or behind rocks, and the turret laser bolts feel like they don't want to hit anything either. Well, apart from the crystals you're trying to protect. And if you want to jump off the turret, you can't go far anyway, as the play area is really restricted. Step out for just a little too long, and it's game over. Honestly, this and Behead the Undead are the filter point for this platinum, as they both take the piss just a little too much, and really come out of nowhere. Yes, you do shoot zombie heads off in the main game, but there's not a turret section to speak of. But I get they should be challenging as they are challenges, and they both do bookend the challenge mode. But it does not mean they're fun or reasonable. Space Vandal sucked the fucking life out of me, and was one of those times where I questioned if I wanted the platinum or not, but as it was the last trophy to get, I begrudgingly got there. But at what cost? I'm not sure. TimeSplitters is an example of a special moment in time, where the devs saw a gap in the market and took it, and so many bumps in the road could have prevented this. And just looking back at how Doak and the rest of the team navigated this minefield is quite impressive, and the DNA of their past works can be heavily felt here, especially after going back to either GoldenEye or Perfect Dark once again. But sometimes, some of the best creations come from a collection of ideas, properties, and then mixing them all together to create something truly new, which in this case resonated enough to give birth to a new franchise. I can only say this from my limited perspective, but being a young British lad in the early 2000s, all the way up until the PS3 and 360 launched, TimeSplitters was a mainstay. Regardless if it was getting a few games in after school or the weekend, I truly think the multiplayer first aspect is what helped this game resonate so much back in the day. With my age group, and probably a bunch of people older, this being a video that has an underlying theme about trophies, and earning them all, meant that I really didn't go into the multiplayer aspect all that much, but in this early game, that was the meat of it all. Before this video, I could count on both hands the amount of times I beat the story, and its challenges even less, because TimeSplitters was all about the multiplayer. TimeSplitters came out at a time when arcades weren't really a thing anymore. Well, for my age group anyway. Sure, they might have been part of a bowling alley, but there wasn't really a designated location for them anymore. Instead, by the time the PS2 came out, gaming had all but shifted to the home over here, so plugging in a multi-tap and 4 controllers became the new norm, as we'd all hunch around my tiny TV in the corner of my bedroom. Or, if we got lucky, the slightly larger CRT TV downstairs. This game was only the start of a new era the PS2 was about to unleash. But as for now, I look forward to covering TimeSplitters 2 in my next video, because that's when this series really kicked off. And thanks to anyone that made it this far. Why not help a lad out and throw me a like and maybe a sub? Hopefully this sounds a bit quaint in the future, but in 2025, I'd love to crack 1,000 subs. So really I appreciate anyone that subscribed at this early stage. Anyway, enough of that. I've been Ben Roy, and until the next video, no more games.
Cheers.
The further away we get from the early 2000s, the more I'm shocked how good we had it as players. Gaming was just in its adolescence at the time, which meant devs were now really starting to experiment with the hardware they had available. Thanks to the PS2's explosion in popularity, compared to its predecessor, and well, every other video game system ever sold, this was a generational gateway into an emerging hobby. Now that's not to say Sony didn't have Nintendo to thank for the foundations they laid, as they kept the industry afloat during the crash, but the electronics company almost deserves this runaway success. Kind of. What with Nintendo double-crossing them over the weird PlayStation hybrid that never made it to market. That and the fact that DVD was the new format of choice, which was adopted by the adult film industry. And if you look back, so was every other successful format. VHS, then DVD, and Blu-ray. But I won't go too deep into that as, you know, platforms don't like that stuff. This all leads to the topic of today's video though, I promise, as TimeSplitters might have not even been a thing without Sony's blessing. Sony was going for a kitchen sink approach when they launched the PS2, and the newly formed 3 Radical made it through the door in the last minute, with a bare bones shooter, TimeSplitters. This was PlayStation's answer to GoldenEye. Even after they got Tomorrow Never Dies on the PS1, that game just missed the mark. Well, quite a bit. The World Is Not Enough didn't exactly sell gangbusters either. So with a really small dev time, a handful of ex-Rare devs gave us TimeSplitters. But what would come next? Well, a sequel of course. So with Second Sight on the bench once again, 3 Radical got to work making the game they originally wanted to.
TimeSplitters 2 up next. Now, the latest version sees you as an agent still battling against those bad guys in various time zones.
This was TimeSplitters again, but with all the trimmings. This covers everything, from a complete overhaul of the HUD and UI. I want the fact that there's some semblance of a story now. We have actual characters, rather than just named NPCs for each mission.
It's basically the backstory to this corny idea that there are these aliens called TimeSplitters who nip around just being vandals through time. That allows us to have a lot of very different environments. Rather than being tied to one sort of specific genre and theme, we can just be as wacky as we want.
And each mission in the story actually has objectives now that are a little bit more than just grabbing a bag and running back to the circle of safety. And in that first game, every level was just a repurposed multiplayer map. And in TimeSplitters 2, that isn't the case. This was a perfect sequel, in every which way, and thanks to the time it was developed in, this meant the devs could just roll into the next game.
Okay, move out!
Somehow it only took 2 years to get this game out as well, and because budgets weren't so insane, this meant devs had room to experiment, because back then a game didn't have to sell gangbusters to survive, or become a live service and consume everything. Sure, they had to make some profit, but it wasn't a life or death situation like it feels now. With TimeSplitters having more of a cartoonesque art style, this meant that Free Radical didn't have to render every last pore on each model, and there wasn't that strive for ultimate realism. And when it comes down to it, a lot of present games don't really have an identity anymore. They all kind of look the same, they're either really realistic, or they go for that Fortnite art style.
Fortnite? Hold up. Fortnite's for kids, man.
So I'll just harken back to my opening statement. We didn't know how good we had it back then. This also meant this game had a bunch of models to play with, which isn't quite the rogues gallery of Future Perfect, but there's so much to choose from here, with there literally being someone or something for everyone. Even those bloody monkeys if that suits you. For what was on offer, TimeSplitters was a fair shot, but with TimeSplitters 2, this is where the fan base was truly built, being the game to draw so many friends around a TV, for endless split-screen action. Back in 2002, this was a novel thing, and the only other games I can think of that could come close, for me anyway, were wrestling games or kart races. Sure, I was a console scrub at heart, and I still am, but TimeSplitters sat comfortably alongside a Return to Castle Wolfenstein, or a Halo. That game continued the work that Rare and Free Radical had started, but there was just something different with TimeSplitters 2. Sure, Halo has a legacy of modernising console FPS, but man, I really think this game pulled its own weight as well. And thanks to the fact that Free Radical wasn't bound to Sony either, this meant that TimeSplitters could get a wider reach, with TimeSplitters 2 being on all 3 major systems. Well, eventually anyway, with IDOS dragging their feet when it came to the GameCube port for some reason. This just being one of the stories brought up by devs, with the hours upon hours of interviews out there, which only ever really gets a brief mention before they move on, and led to Free Radical leaving IDOS for a much bigger publisher with Future Perfect.
EA Games.
Challenge everything.
But landing on the GameCube must have felt like a homecoming for the devs. They broke away from the restrictive environment of Nintendo, and now they were back, but this time on their own terms, with a sequel to something that was all theirs, and a perfect complement to the Nintendo first party. For the many players that had stayed with Nintendo, there would also be a welcomed return to something familiar with the first level, but I'll get into that soon enough. As I mentioned when talking about TimeSplitters 1, these games were gone for quite a long time, until they dropped on the PSN Marketplace, all at once, and then a month or so later, they had trophies, so it'd be rude not to get the platinum, right? So as I've done with the first game, I'm going to take a look back at this sequel, in a pseudo-retrospective type way, recounting what it was like to get the platinum, and well, spoilers, this time the challenges weren't that bad. Anyway, I'm Benroy, and if you can help me out, drop me a like or a sub, that'd be really appreciated. But enough of that, it's time to take a deep dive into the sequel that cemented the series, TimeSplitters 2. The list consists of 2 bronze trophies, 10 silver trophies, and 8 gold trophies. So unlike the first game in this trilogy, TimeSplitters 2 is a deeper game overall, which means there's more to play with when it comes to the trophy list, which is still quite a novelty for me when it comes to the PlayStation 2 era games. And at the time of writing, recording, and well, editing this video, older games in that neglected batch of classics are now being updated with trophies. No, the Phantom Menace might still not have a trophy list, but to really age this video, Star Wars Demolition recently got a list, so that must mean it's only a matter of time now before the Phantom Menace gets one too. As I mentioned before, the TimeSplitters games didn't initially have a list, but as soon as they did, and I survived the challenges in the first game, this game was truly a bucket list platinum for me. Getting the platinum in games isn't always something I go for. Normally I ever go the extra mile for the games I love, or ones that I've just put so many hours in, which are essentially podcast games at that point. Vehicles to keep my hands busy, as I work my way through a 4-hour sacred drop every Friday. So yeah, I do have the platinum in Horizon games in days gone. but they all served a purpose, whilst I really make a concerted effort to pop the platinum in Splinter Cell or the Mass Effect trilogies. And side note, am I the only person out there that likes Days Gone more than Horizon? I feel that Sony Bend were really done dirty. Deacon St. John deserves some love, but that's a tangent for another video. Anyway, back to TimeSplitters 2. There was no way I wasn't getting the platinum here.
Aha! Crystal, I've got you right to go.
Even though I was kind of prepared for what was to come, thanks to the challenges prior. But before that, beating the story was first up, and beating all 10 story missions on normal or higher will pop 7 silvers and 3 golds. And the difficulty aspect is key here, unlike the first game for the most part, as changing the difficulty in TimeSplitters 2 adds more objectives, rather than just changing the place of a bag. It also moves the end of a level in quite a few places, and playing on easy means you're missing out more often than not. Just looking at the Siberian Dam level for example, on easy, the level ends down at a dig site, past some labs that aren't even accessible. Though cranking up the difficulty by 1 notch not only makes the enemies more prevalent, but opens up this map quite a bit, with Cortez now needing to get to the top of the dam to end the mission. And if I'm being honest, anyone not playing on normal is cheating themselves out of a big part of this game. You really shouldn't cruise through this game on easy. TimeSplitters 2 also has a few miscellaneous trophies to collect before shifting off story mode, and these odd trophies littered here and there are essential for a robust trophy list, with one satisfying the fans of the stealth genre. Well, it gives them a taste anyway. This being the Leave No Evidence trophy. This gold will pop after beating any story level without triggering an alarm. Now, it's not quite like playing as Agent 47 or Sam Fisher, but in the 2020s, games with stealth options are really hard to come by. That, and it looks like Ubisoft are going to fall apart before we see whatever that Splinter Cell remake is. Pool Shark is a fun little silver to pop, as it requires Cortez to take the time out of his mission, go to O'Leary's, and pocket all the balls on the table. Nothing too taxing, but a game needs these sort of trophies. Using 15 different weapons in story mode will also pop a gold, and I'm pretty sure this one's probably unmissable, if you play the story all the way through anyway. This now just leaves the rescue of Ramona, in the good, the bad, and the TimeSplitter. This is quite a unique trophy as it sees the devs showing off what they could do with the gunpowder, and well, that's it for the little trophies.
Go get the Colonel! He's at the mine!
Back in 2002, I'm not sure if this took someone an afternoon or even a week to program, but it's a cool little side tangent from the main mission. That and Ramona is one of the only significant sidekicks of the entire story, so maybe this is shades of something that got cut out, or maybe one dev just had some extra time and wanted to try this out. There are 2 bronze trophies tied to a new gadget, the temporal uplink, but I'll dive into that soon enough. Finding 2 game cartridges and then playing them via the uplink will pop these trophies, and this is specifically Anaconda and Astrolander, with Anaconda being found in Siberia and Astrolander being found in Neo Tokyo. There is a 3rd game, Retro Racer, but this isn't tied to a trophy for some reason. All 3 games are little neat gimmicks, especially if you loved Snake back in the day, but these won't take up much of the player's time. This just leaves the last 4 trophies, which are all tied to winning trophies in Arcade League or Challenge Mode. On first glance, this might look daunting, but they are a lot simpler than what came in the first game, and most of them won't suck your f***ing soul away either. They just take a fair few hours to get through, and really add a bunch of value to this game, especially back on the PS2. The devs got every last pixel out of TimeSplitters 2 with these modes. With more budget and time to play with, those at Free Radical were able to flesh out more of a story this time around, which not only helps to ground events, but set the tone for the series to come, something that was really absent when playing the first game. Look, I know story isn't everything in a game, but what TimeSplitters would eventually become with Future Perfect, well, that was helped along with a light-hearted romp that Cortez was on, as he seeks to save the world from TimeSplitters.
Got a patrol on level 2. Incoming! On your right!
The year is 2401. We now take up the role of Sergeant Cortez, as he and Corporal Hart are possibly humanity's last hope against the titular race, the TimeSplitters. They also have a neat redesign as well, looking more like angry serpents now, or weird floating skull heads, rather than just guys covered in burned bacon bits. Like any work, this franchise really benefited from a second go around. With already in the first cutscene, this game feels leagues above the first, and the player hasn't even got to that level yet. Free Radical X devs confirmed they wanted the same sort of treatment in TimeSplitters 2 as in 1, but they just didn't have enough time to put it into practice, or the know-how. So when it came to the cutscenes, they brought on some extra hands for TimeSplitters 2. That, if I'm honest, helps set up most levels flawlessly. They can be cool, light-hearted, or even funny at times, with a little slapstick painted in for good measure. Though there are 1 or 2 that feel a bit basic. But with the first cutscene, 2 Space Marines have found out the TimeSplitters have time crystals, and they're using them to go back in humanity's past. Even after endless battles in the future, the TimeSplitters just won't quit. As they travel through time, they've manipulated our species to destabilize us in the battle to come. The last chance for the human race is for Cortez and Hart to go back in time and grab these crystals. Though the TimeSplitters won't give up that easily, and they've spread them throughout the past and the future, so this means Hart's gonna have to stay behind, as she ensures that Cortez can't be followed. Though the Splitters won't give up that easily, even when on the other foot, but for how long can she hold off the portal chamber? Nobody knows. Though the pair are aware, it won't be forever.
You go after them! I'll hold them off here!
Jumping through the portal, Cortez finds himself in the 1990s, in Siberia, but he isn't quite himself. Much like a greedy corporation would seek to do, he takes on the mantle of another person from the current time. Though this makes sense here, rather than, a corporation trying to slap a shield onto a new character, taking a name they haven't earned, or any other MacGuffin.
Ray Skywalker.
And yeah, this was meant to be the case in TimeSplitters 1, but as I've mentioned already, they just didn't have time. And with that opening cutscene out of the way, it's time to split and get to the levels. Each opening cutscene for every level serves as more of a little vignette to see what's going on in that setting, as it establishes the tone and what's to come, and hopefully makes the player laugh along the way. Starting off in Siberia, the year is 1990, 2 men, Nikolai and Shivers, are investigating the sounds of gunshots, even though neither have clearance to be this deep down in the base.
Nikolai! Shh, shh, shh. We shouldn't be in the research center without security clearance.
This is a classic opening to any old school horror, with the soldier's flashlight not working as they come to a discoloured figure. With a single yell, it's clear that this person isn't quite human anymore. He is now one of the undead, and whilst this might be a great opening, I'm not sure if it spoils the payoff for what's to come. That's really my own critique for it, as even for the year 2002, the cinematography is on point, and you get a real sense of the time and place. After a chaotic opening, cut to an establishing shot of the dam, Cortez flies through a portal, before his first instance of Freaky Friday, just to make sure everyone knows what's going on, and why Cortez doesn't resemble his Vin Diesel looking self.
It's all down to me now.
Now the player takes control of Ilsa Nadir, who I'm just discovering is the daughter of Dr. Nadir from the first game. The more you know, huh? The dev team at Free Radical are never shy to show their influences, and it's abundantly clear to anyone who played GoldenEye 007 to see where this level came from. Siberia is a blend of levels from that N64 classic, all brought together for what might very well be the best level in this game. Maybe even the series. And thanks to the devs, we now know this level took apparently half the dev time to make. I mean, it isn't hard to see why. What with the ability to go stealth, the cameras, varied enemy types and objects, Doak and the gang were really putting their best foot forward here, kicking off with a sniper rifle and silenced pistol. It's clear they were suggesting the way to play this level, but that doesn't mean you have to stick to stealth. Hell, I know a fair few people that hate stealth in their games, whereas I love it. Any game that lets me subdue or pop the heads of countless goons while skulking around a base is a winner in my books. Taking out the few initial guards in the first section can set the fate for the rest of this level, but as I always opt for the stealth option, this means some of the louder artillery can be saved for later. The objectives here are to deactivate the communications dish, investigate the secret digging site, retrieve the time crystal, destroy the biohazard container, and escape through the portal. On easy anyway. When bumped up to normal or hard, this first level makes TimeSplitters 1 really feel like an alpha. Getting to the top of the dam, burning all the evidence in file cabinets, restoring the power, not allowing the mutants to survive, and destroying a gunship are all extras that are just skipped over on easy. Playing on normal or hard bumps the enemy count up as well, so watch out for those bloody snipers at the top of the dam. And thanks to the snipers being silenced, means that you might not even know where the shots are coming from, but taking those fucked out is so satisfying. Because the power is out, this means we'll have to take the stairs. And again, blasting away guards, or popping off their heads in a stealth manner, are both feasible ways to go. Getting through the tunnel at the top of the dam, whilst remaining stealthy can be a bit of a challenge, but spraying and praying won't alert the rest of the map anyway. The Soviet S-447 will make short work of any stragglers. After dealing with some excess steam
pressure at 0%.
It'd be all clear to head down the other side. But if you're like me, you're gonna forget to deactivate the bloody communications dish. So after sorting that out, it's time to take out a few more guards, cameras, and melons? I don't know why this remote base in Siberia has melons, but sure, I'll shoot them. Watching out for minigun turrets, it's time to switch the power back on and head deeper underground. That is, if the system disk is to hand. If not, a slight detour into the side rooms is required. This initiates a lockdown once again. Which is one of the reasons why you need to play on normal or above, because this is a cool little set piece from any zombie classic fiction, and it would have been a shocking introduction for the creatures of the night if they weren't already shown. Now after the power's back online, it's a clear shot to the biohazard container, when a bunch more zombies want to come out and have a go.
Alright, you bastards! Come and have a go if you think you're not enough!
Bit of a leap here, but it really feels like one of the scenes out of the first Resident Evil movie. Though the only way this could have been true is if the devs crammed this in months before going gold. It's a solid way to introduce zombies, and was one of the more effective scenes in that first Resident Evil film. Even if it didn't really follow the game, I still love it. Making use of the flamethrower is a solid option, but when you're fighting zombies, they're still going to come after you for a little bit of time, so I just prefer to blast their heads off. Even though this time around, it isn't totally necessary to shoot them in the head. The devs tweaked this enemy to make sure they wouldn't keep coming forever. Headshots only is a little bit hardcore, but I'm sure this change was needed for more of the average player. Though I still wish most games would take a leaf out of that first game's book, by making a mode where zombies can only be killed by headshots or other blows to the head, just to really make them a threat. With the container destroyed, this is where it would all be over on easy. But now, it's time to grab the crystal and head up a lift to the top of the dam. Though heading back won't be like the prior game, there won't be TimeSplitters all over the place. Not yet anyway, as mutants and more zombies litter the base. These also go after the few guards that are still alive, which adds a really chaotic nature to the escape, and again is quite ahead of its time. Because I don't know why I remember this, but just jump into The Last of Us. When you played that game, the infected and the human enemies never interacted. And it wasn't until the Left Behind DLC where they featured it for the first time. And I remember that even being a feature that they had this working finally. So it's quite funny that Free Radical had this going back in 2002. For crowd control, the 12 gauge shotgun will come in handy, as well as the grenade launcher attached to the Soviet S-47, which is another addition to this game, as many weapons now have a secondary fire mode, just to spice things up. At the top of the dam, it'll be time to take out a tried and trusted video game enemy, the evil helicopter. Thankfully there are a few turrets up here to get this finished off and head into the next level. The second mission jumps back in time to Chicago in 1932, 1 year before Prohibition was ended, meaning that gangs who ran illegal booze were at the height of their power, and some could argue their greed was at a peak. And this led to how Big Tony got in trouble with the TimeSplitters, who just happened to be undercover in his organisation. So not a bad next stop for Cortez, as Marco the Snitch waits nervously outside.
What am I worried about? It's not me that's got to tell the boss.
He can hear a struggling mob boss express his displeasure with the current situation. Big Tony knows that Jake Fenton is back, and wants him dead.
I want that son of a... I want him dead, you hear me? Dead!
Cutting to the hard-boiled ex-cop himself, this detective vows to take down Big Tony.
Because I'm taking you down.
It's a fine setup, especially for the period, but just one point I'd like to pick out. Not that continuity is the biggest priority in this franchise, but how did Big Tony get here from the 1930s? As he was put down in the Chinese restaurant in the 70s by Harry Tipper. These are questions that TimeSplitters 4 could have answered. Maybe this is Big Tony's dad or granddad or something like that, and they're all just called Big Tony? Who knows? Chicago sort of starts out similar to Siberia. By that you can snipe goons if you want. Fenton also has a silenced Luger for good measure. However, this mission is very different from Dam, being that it doesn't really have many open areas. And it's very clearly railroaded, once the player gets out of the docks into the main street anyway. From here it's almost a straight shot to Big Tony's abode. Closing off this map and changing the time of day does a lot for it though, in the early stages of this game anyway. Though I wish there were a few more vantage points around this map, to use the vintage rifle to full effect. But it isn't long before the devs show off something that was quite mind-blowing for 2002. I might be overreacting a bit, but the pseudo-liquid tech the devs had worked on was wild for the time. Shooting a whiskey barrel would cause the deep amber liquid to start rushing out of the barrel. It would stop once it theoretically reached the hull. but if another shot was fired below it, then it would carry on. Again, an example of sheer attention to detail when it comes to this quirky shooter. This wasn't needed, but it's very much appreciated. And blasting away a few barrels would tick off an objective on normal or above, and these are hard to miss for some of the most seasoned players of games, who would just shoot the things anyway, regardless if they're red barrels or not, as players who've just been trained to shoot everything. But playing on easy, the game will never nudge Fenton to go after them. Regardless, it's a waste of perfectly good whiskey. The rest of the mission requires Fenton to rendezvous with Marco the Snitch, then protecting him and grabbing the membership card, and of course eliminating Big Tony, all whilst grabbing the time crystal and getting through the portal. Unlike Siberia, Chicago doesn't change much on normal or hard, this being a small level and all that, but after speaking to Marco on the phone,
Meet me at the newsstand down the main street.
Tony's brother will try and escape. Of course, the Tommy gun is the weapon of choice to take him out. Like destroying those whiskey barrels, on lower difficulties this is optional, but cranking up the difficulty will make this a secondary or primary one. I'll also just mention here, I won't be covering every mission objective in detail, just ones tied to the Sacred Platinum. It's best to clear out the mobsters and play a bit of pool before talking to Marco. Fenton can even check the cash register for an extra level of interactivity. And just by describing this, it's clear how much more engaging the second level is compared to the prior game, even if the level design can be a bit basic at times, and almost resemble the town from TimeSplitters 1, but on a grander scale. Also, having civilian NPCs goes a long way to make this level feel lived in, rather just a stage or a movie set or something like that. Unlike the escort challenge in the first game, protecting Marco isn't as stilted as Christy Malone.
Come on, let's get inside.
Even though you can tell a bunch of these guys are just spawning around the corner, they don't fall from the sky like in the first game. That did get a little ridiculous, though I do appreciate them for standing still so I can pop their heads off. Another slight difference in this level, once Marco gets back to the safe house, on easy the pass for the nightclub is on the table, though on normal or above, TNT will be there in its place. This means the player's gonna have to hunt around for a certain safe to blow its doors off. Now I don't know how the money and the pass survived that blast, but that's video games. And thanks to this detour, this means Marco will warn Fenton that some guys are waiting outside.
When check outside, there's some guys out to get you.
So any excuse to snap some more bots is a bonus in my books. Especially for the redefined gunplay that Free Radical put into this sequel. Inside the club and beyond, it's clear the devs have been watching Scarface, which is obvious once you look at the decor in the main hall. And this is even when the boss fight takes place too. So after saying hello to Big Tony's little friend, and this like the helicopter from the first level, is a new addition to the series. Being that that first game didn't have bosses at all. I wouldn't go as far to say this is a one-to-one rip-off of Scarface either. And just again, this is talented people pulling from what they know, mixing it up, and putting it into a new piece of work.
Say hello to my little friend!
And those at Free Radical snuck this in before Rockstar could with Vice City.
I've come to take over your business! Tommy, you betrayed me, you idiot!
After saying hello to his little friend and then doing away with him, the TimeSplitters will finally show themselves. You can either introduce them to a little friend of your own, or jump straight through the portal and get out of Dodge. I haven't mentioned this yet, but thank Christ the devs did away with those red circles. And just as a little aside, going back to that first game, they honestly look so jarring, and the portals just work so much better. Sure, they might be a 2D sprite, but they're flashier at least. Oh, and another great touch is the health and ammo bars have been upgraded to resemble the iconic design from GoldenEye 007, but just different enough to avoid a lawsuit. Next up, Cortez travels even further back in time, with Notre Dame being the setting for the third level. Unluckily for me, when I visited this historical landmark, it was still being repaired, so at least I get to see it in video game form. I'm sure the real one was full of zombies and other ghouls before it got set on fire. Anyway, Jacques is up to no good, as lightning crackles outside, illuminating the scene ever so briefly. It's clear he's up to something nefarious to that Parisian maiden, and others throughout, something I'm sure that AAA games would definitely shy away from now.
So pure, so innocent.
This opening cinematic is a really meat and potato setup, but it really works, and sets the scene perfectly, letting the player know who they need to save, and who to kill. In disguise, Viola drops down to save as many maidens as she can, and she could have just had a normal getup, but this is just one of the examples that pushes the character design and the art on show, because whenever something can look different, eccentric or fun, and all the main cast stand out in some way or another, it's always clear you're playing a TimeSplitters game. Oh, and I just have to mention, it's a shame Mr. Underwood is relegated to player 2. I know he isn't as interesting as Viola, but that man's got glorious facial hair, and I love his selection animation in Future Perfect.
I say, it's rather warm in here.
So like the last game, but there is no element of choice this time around. With the sawn-off shotgun making a return, it should be pretty obvious what enemies we're going to face in this level. But thanks to them getting a facelift, the zombies are so much more fun to fight. Like in the first level, they can be transformed soldiers, or here they're sewer zombies, and then later crypt zombies. And there are a bunch more sprinkled throughout, and by the time you get to Future Perfect, there's a full bloody roster of them. The objectives are all pretty standard in this level, as Notre Dame doesn't really have any side paths for the player to take. And by starting off in the sewers, I'm sure this triggers some players, but it just means we get to see that awesome new slimy zombie. Rescue the maidens.
Thank you.
Retrieve the time crystal, kill the portal demon and Jacques are all objectives to be completed, but on normal, players are also going to have to help the hunchback save the final maiden. Oh, and of course escaping through the portal is on the list, but I don't think I need to keep mentioning that. There's a really chilling feel to this level. And even though we have zombies again, these have a totally different feel to the science fiction inspired ones in Siberia, as you get more of a demonic possession feel here. Given enough explorer vibes, the player needs to trigger a few switches to get through the sewers, to get up to the crypt, and yes, you know those gits on the floor are gonna get up as soon as you pull that lever. There's also some enemies that spawn in right in front of the player like in the first game, but I just see that as the TimeSplitters doing whatever they can behind the scenes, just to stop Cortez in his Viola disguise, though I can't condone the waste of good wine, as the barrier explodes and fire breaks out. What is it with this game and spilling perfectly good booze? Though I guess if you make that pseudo liquid draining tech, you're gonna use it wherever you can. Saving the maidens isn't that straightforward either, with crypt zombies spawning in to hopefully catch the player off guard. And again, I just really appreciate the variety of zombies. I wrote my final dissertation at uni on the zombie genre, like forever ago now, so I'm always game for more zombies.
Thank you.
It's always best to take a look before willy-nilly saving a maiden as well, as there's a changeling mixed up with those who need saving, just to keep all the players on their toes.
Alright, listen up! All the triads and the ugly women on this side, and all the fine women on this side right now! Translated.
And this jawless fiend doesn't even feature an easy. For those who want a smoother ride, up in the main hall, there's a bounty of undead priests just to mix up the level. As these guys shoot back, guarding the time crystal, they also drop a Luger if the player's bored of the shotgun. But who can ever get bored of shooting hordes of the undead with a shotgun? It just works, it's science after all. And I'm pretty sure shotguns are made for this purpose. Though it should be mentioned that Lugers weren't actually a thing yet. It wouldn't be until 1902 that they were invented. Historical inaccuracy aside, we'll just blame it on the TimeSplitters. Saving the last maiden won't be as straightforward as the rest. But this time Viola gets a helping hand, courtesy of the hunchback and Notre Dame. This fight is best suited for dual wielding Lugers. Putting down those priests and popping off enough zombie heads will allow this mad shagger to escort the maiden to safety.
Thank you very much. Come on, my dear, let's go!
Little moments like this make it feel like everyone throughout time is working against the TimeSplitters. Though just when it looks like Viola is clear, in steps the portal demon, which was summoned by Jacques through a portal caused by the splitters. For the most part, this behemoth is pretty standard to take down, though that would be if there wasn't a bunch of zombie bastards lurking about. And up here, I get flashbacks to breaking more glass. Why does Free Radical love breaking glass so much? Making it to the roof, there'll be waves of undead priests, as well as TimeSplitters before we finally get to Jacques. Though thankfully he can be stun locked, and it won't be long before it's time to jump through the next portal. Now it's time to jump forward in time and return to Planet X, as we catch Hank Nova crashing after a dogfight.
Mayday, mayday, losing altitude!
This opening cutscene is pretty basic, like the rest of this level if I'm being honest. And though it might be a welcome palate cleanser, Planet X feels like something churned out to be a bit filler, rather than one that has a bunch of love poured into it. The mock Civil War setting could be interesting, but it's just off to the side. The player never really gets much information into it. Though saying that, I guess they don't with those levels set in the past either. And I'm probably going off my own prior knowledge of history when it comes to those, so I guess I just have a grudge against Planet X. The objectives are also quite antiquated, and really feel like going through the motions. Locating the crashed UFO is pretty straightforward, bar the automated turret at the entrance shooting down other mocks. And on easy, this is where their level would end, making it super short. But on normal and higher, Hank needs to take a bit of a detour through an underground passage to the UFO base. There is also a turret section before that to defend the beachhead, but as we know, turret sections are very 2000s, and I shouldn't hate on them that much, but it just feels out of place here. Maybe if it was on some sort of base, rather than just there in the middle of the area. Maybe I'm having flashbacks to that challenge mode in TimeSplitters 1. But going back to UFOs, they don't let up, with them attacking the player straight off the bat. It's a bit cheap, but it does go along with the cutscene. Unlike prior levels though, there's much more verticality here, matching Planet X in the first game. After a while it also just loops around, just to add a little bit more confusion. Alien flies can also be a hassle to deal with. If the player doesn't decide to just leg it, finding the UFO base itself, it's wild the devs didn't make this mandatory to visit, because on easy you just never go here. We got our first up and close look at the Retrospective, so that's one thing this level has going for it, and they're just leagues above the other splitters with those flaming skull heads. That being said, this is where we get introduced to their spamming electric attack. They all think they're Emperor Palpatine.
No. 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 You must die!
Spamming rockets won't really be a technique either, as the homing rocket launcher can't get its sights set on them for that long, as they disappear and re-teleport around the player. But killing enough of them will allow Cortez to grab the next time crystal and get the hell out of there.
Welcome to Earth.
The opening cutscene for Neo Tokyo screams early 2000s. Slow motion and all. You'd just think those characters on screen cloaked in leather, and that would really seal the deal. And the fact that Cortez is now taking the role of a hacker named Ghost. Again, Free Radical just wearing their inspiration on their sleeve. Hey! And that's not the only work that Free Radical takes inspiration from in this level, as Ridley Scott's Blade Runner also gets a nod to it, with a crosswalk that constantly says, "Now, cross, now," as well as some flying police cars. These are all just fun callbacks rather than rip-offs, I'd say, with the rest of Neon Tokyo not being a one-to-one copy and paste job. However, I think the devs were a bit ahead of their time by thinking we'd have cool things like flying cars in 2019. You know that futuristic year of 2019? Christ, that's so long ago now. Thankfully, this level has a lot more meat to it than Planet X, even though it's considerably smaller. Following the hacker to the research area is a welcome change of pace, especially for players who are fans of sneaking about in their video games. But I have seen people show a lot of hate for this level. Stealth isn't for everyone, I guess, and this is why we can't have good things. For the first objective, the temporal uplink comes into play majorly here, with it being essential to avoid lines of sight from cameras and other NPCs, as well as those flying police cars. Being spotted makes this level a real pain, and can lead to a game over. Once Ghost is in the base, deactivating the TimeSplitter machine and killing the gang leader are always on the table. But killing the hacker chief weirdly isn't. Another level of espionage is also added for playing on the correct difficulty, by photographing evidence and uploading it to the police server. So here's me just pleading once again for people to play on normal, at the very least. And because Ghost isn't the bad guy, avoiding civilian casualties is a secondary objective. Playing on easy is the only time Ghost starts with a gun, so on normal you have to take a little detour round to the gun rack behind the glass. And again, I can't express, sneaking around like this makes me yearn for another stealth resurgence, or at least 1 or 2 games. And any level that features rain goes a long way to set the scene. Making me feel like a real pro stealthsman as you trail the character you're meant to follow. Though on repeat playthroughs, the player knows where they need to go, so they could just negate this whole section and wait at the underground entrance. Getting to the entrance of the hacker lair, it's key not to rush as there are a few more cameras in Ghost's way, and they're handy to spy on the passcode. The player can now either go loud or continue their sneaking mission. With a few swift shots to the head. Then after running around gathering evidence with the camera, uploading the data will trigger an alarm.
Warning. Unauthorized data transfer in progress. Activating security measures.
The very same sound from Southern Eye in GoldenEye. But this isn't the only sound effect that makes it over to this game, with the reloading and some gun sounds being recycled for the series. which isn't really a complaint or anything, as sound effects are some of the most recycled things throughout film, TV and games. With the TimeSplitter that's being experimented on coming back to life, it's time to put it down for good, so it's best to grab the SPB-90 for this and the rest of the enemies as they rush into the base. Here's where the difficulties differentiate once again. With on easy, Sudoku is in the base trying to kill you, but on normal she's outside with a bunch more goons, so it makes killing her a bit more of a challenge, before grabbing the crystal and jumping through the next portal. Wild West opens up with a cutscene that's an undeniable pastiche to classic spaghetti westerns, complete with those specific angles to boot. And again, just goes to show the range that this premise has, because in TimeSplitters, you can literally be anywhere at any time. And if you think about it too much, this premise could break at the seams. Like, does Elijah remember that he was inhabited by Cortez? And why does each character's mission always coincide with Cortez's? I don't know, but honestly, I don't think it was designed to be pulled apart this much, especially with characters like Venus Star hanging about, sticking mostly to a town setting. This really makes Wild West a shooting gallery of a level, with the path being pretty straightforward, though it has plenty of balconies and windows for the outlaws to hide in. This makes it perfect for the vintage rifle and revolver. As with each turn down a street, there can be a surprising amount of distance between the player and the next enemy, and these guys aren't going to settle for a fair duel. So thanks to how this level was built, there isn't really a difference between playing this on easy, normal or hard, with ripping down posters or Ramona being the only extra objective, which is pretty paper thin. The rest are pretty straightforward too, with rescuing Ramona.
I'm just dying in here!
And killing the Colonel being, well, all there is. Oh, and saving a certain damsel in distress, which really is a sneak peek into the next game. And by that I mean a lot of the character design are future perfect.
Let's get down to it in the squad car.
What do you think of this boner I got?
It won't be long before Elijah reaches Ramona, and this is where one of the unique one-time mechanics feature, that being laying down a bunch of gunpowder and blowing off the back of the jail, and it's still pretty satisfying to pull off today, because you can get quite elaborate with it. Doing this will open up the next part of the level, so Elijah can move on and collect that bounty. Because this isn't the Colonel we all know and love. This one's less fried chicken and more Confederate army. Though being a bit of a history nerd, I couldn't help but notice that dates are a little bit off here. The American Civil War didn't start until 1861, which means the Colonel couldn't have deserted the Confederates. Not yet anyway, as Wild West is set in 1853. Apparently this level was meant to be set in 1890, but still this could have been a bit of a stretch, as the Civil War ended in 1865. Dr. Doak has gone on the record owning this mistake as well, as he said he was writing it from memory, rather than consulting the history books. Then again, if I was him, I would just blame it on the TimeSplitters, and just say they were messing with the timelines. This does make this the first level in the timeline, as no other level in history takes place before it, so that's something I guess. Saving Venus Star doesn't take much either, with Free Radical flexing their pseudo water tech once again. Though I'm pretty sure Venus could have slipped by this fire and carried on with her day. Then again, looking at the shape of her, maybe something would have got cooked.
Why, thanks.
Leaving the town, it would be time to dual-wield revolvers and take down the Colonel, but not before playing with a few minecarts. It's a real shame you can't ride them. Grabbing the crystal in the blocked-off mine will trigger a bit of a throwback, with Reaper Splitters now spawning in all over the shop. Just make sure you didn't miss any wanted posters like I did, otherwise you have to go back through the level and find the bloody thing. Before you can jump through the portal and move on. In a different game, I might chastise the developers for making this a bit straightforward, but I'm sure most players wouldn't have a problem with Wild West. I mean, at the end of the day, they're here to shoot bad guys and move on. And the Wild West setting is a welcomed one, especially as it doesn't feature a giant mechanical spider. Jumping forward a little over 100 years, Cortez now inhabits the body of Harry Tipper, which is something I wonder if the two ever brought up when they met. Like, did Cortez go, hey dude, I was inside you at one point, or I possessed you, or something like that? It could have been one of those weird sketches. This level introduces Kalos, who, spoilers, will return in Future Perfect.
It's time to get out my big weapon.
But in a change for Tipper, he's now more of a suave secret agent than a beat cop who would be going after a drug bust, with him resembling more of a blend of something like Austin Powers and James Bond. Probably Austin Powers a little bit more, to be honest.
Who sent you? You'll have to kill me.
As the cutscene opens, we see Tipper has gone and got himself captured, by Kalos no less, with a nice little nod to Goldfinger.
Do you expect me to talk?
No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
However, even when it looks like there isn't a way out for Tipper, he never lacks confidence.
Has anyone ever told you you have a screw loose?
Clearly, Callus expected Tipper to die. Well, the laser doesn't really do its job. So instead of getting captured, Callus just decides to blow up his secret island base. And his minions don't even seem to care that much. Well, it gives us someone to shoot at least. This is also the first character other than Cortez or Hart to mention the time crystals.
Just give me the crystals, and maybe I'll go easy on you.
Or crystals of any kind. So it isn't quite clear if they all know what's going on. Or maybe this is just Cortez talking through Tipper. Someone should really ask the Doctor himself one day. With this being a race against time, literally, the only objectives are to deactivate all 5 bombs, and eventually take down Kalos. We're trying to minimize scientist casualties along the way, as useless as they are. Seriously, you'd think these snivelling geniuses would want to get a move on, so we all don't blow up down here. The difficulty changes only really impact the time Tipper has to get the job done, with Hard seemingly being the canonical time, as Kalos says it in the cutscene.
But in 2 minutes, I will still be in one piece, unlike yourself. Goodbye.
Hey, look, we can work this out.
Thanks to the position that Tipper starts in, this level's a real scramble to get some ammo. Unlike the prior levels, extra ammo is a finite commodity, though accessing the Atom Smasher complex cameras can help save a few bullets. Thankfully, once each bomb is deactivated, the time goes up just slightly, to give the player some breathing room. The first few sections can be stealthed, but again it's just quite weird that these guys are patrolling around like nothing's happening, and they're not going to blow up in just a minute. Then progressing through the base, they get a little bit more trigger happy, as they try and kill the only guys that can stop the base from blowing up, following the trend of giving each level a minor gimmick for the player to deal with. Twisting a valve and putting out some fire with an extinguisher will be required to pass a massive bulkhead door. After this, the black suited elite guards become more frequent. They take a few more shots to put down, just to make the countdown that much more tense, but at least they drop the Soviet S-47 and the sniper rifle, just to mix up the combat. And at this point, be sure not to make the same mistake I did, as I missed the side room filled with poison gas, which concealed a crane game to deactivate the next bomb. Having to backtrack with the time ticking down isn't recommended, but fighting your way to Kalos, it's safe to assume that there's a goon around every corner, as the player is funneled through a utilitarian concrete tunnel. That or minigun turrets are just hanging around for a bit of fun. Oh, and watch out for those hiding inside shipping containers, as these cheeky buggers even use the Soviet S-47 secondary fire, the grenade launcher, just to spice things up. So Harry Tipper's gonna have to bust out those dance moves and dodge those grenades. The final section before the boss fight really tests Tipper though, with it switching up the placement of the bombs, and requires a bit more legwork to be able to reach them.
Now is it blue over red or red over blue?
This of course depends on what difficulty you're playing on, because if you play on easy, it's almost a straight shot to Kalos, but at normal or above, you've got to deactivate some lasers before even getting to the bombs. Fighting Kalos is quite underwhelming though, but then again, Blofeld never really put up much of a fight either, though with his demise, or should I say defeat because he'll be back, now both the Scourge and Reaper Splitters will spawn in, which gives the sense this alien race is getting a little bit desperate, as this and the final level are the only ones where this happens. Flipping a few switches to turn on the reactor will finally bring this level to an end, and honestly this is the first real difficulty spike in a while. God, especially on hard, Atom Smasher doesn't mess around, as that countdown timer means the player can't take a break and they have to keep pushing forward. Jumping back in time, it's time for Captain Ash to have his turn to save the human race. And here in this cutscene, he already has the time crystal, so just like Tipper, he's clearly aware of them.
Aha! Crystal, I've got you right to go.
But thanks to a stone golem, Ash will have to work a little harder to get this ancient treasure, though this treasure has haunted Ash since he left the military, and he isn't about to give up on it yet, even with dark forces afoot. This time Captain Ash has traded the deserts of Egypt for the jungles of Guatemala, and thanks to a certain boulder later, it's clear the devs took inspiration from Raiders of the Lost Ark, rather than the Mummy. When it comes to objectives, you're going to see a bit of a pattern now, and by that I mean that they're all a bit trimmed down, as the later levels in the game already focus the player in one direction. And in the Aztec level, the only real objective is to take down the stone golem and retrieve the time crystal. Yes, entering the lost temple is listed, but you can't really miss it. Well, you do have to get past a stone puzzle, well, that's about it. Starting off, Ash will come up against a group of NPCs that will go on to become synonymous with the franchise, the monkeys. These little bastards are Rob Job, but without the insta-kill hat, so really they should be banned in any multiplayer match. Well, if it's an honourable one anyway.
The crystal's mine, you know.
But Ash has to keep the British end up, and holds onto that stiff upper lip as he deals with the locals. Though the player's gonna have to get a little bit more tactical once the crossbow's acquired, because fire is a key mechanic in Aztec ruins. They're essential to take down wooden golems and swat away those wasps. When you consider this could have been another straight up shooting level like Wild West. So it's cool the devs went and found a way to shake it up just a little. Even if you look back at levels like Siberia, it's clear some levels got more love than others. But now the mystery of the watermelons has finally been solved. As monkeys try and use them to take Ash out, and for some reason they explode, but that's video games. A nice bonus is you can retrieve crossbow bolts from monkey corpses, with ammo being a premium in this level too. And playing for Aztec Ruins, it's clear this is just a repurposed multiplayer map, unlike others that have much more going on. Saying that, it is quite a shame that we don't see all the story maps in multiplayer, in some form or another. Down in the chamber below, fighting golems isn't that straightforward, cause if you shoot these things, it doesn't kill them. The monkeys and warriors still go down with a few bolts, but here stone defeats wood. Dropping them through trapdoors will get the job done for now, and does require some semblance of skill to get right. It's not just a case of leading these lumbering giants to the goal, so you probably have to try a few times. Playing on easy, this is where the level would end, but who would want to do that? Being careful not to end up like that side character in Indiana Jones. Aztec is one more puzzle for the player. Even with the temporal uplink to hand, I actually forgot how to deal with this one, but it should have been obvious when the vintage rifle is just right here. How do these weird faces shoot lasers at Captain Ash though? No idea, it's probably focusing the sunlight or something like that. Watching out for that boulder, Ash can now finally grab the crystal and deal with the golems for good, thanks to a conveniently placed grenade launcher. But it isn't just straight to the next level yet, as we get a glimpse into the future, for the first time in a while.
You made it.
Here you go. What?
It's now been made clear that Cortez has been dropping each one off after every mission, and I can't help but think is TimeSplitters ever influenced by Crystal Maze? You know that game show was split into 4 areas like the Victorian, Spooky, I don't know, Aztec and Future. I don't know, maybe Dr. Doak watched a bit too much Crystal Maze. In this rare post-level cutscene though, it's made clear that time is running out, with the Reaper splitters almost in the chamber. So with one more crystal left, this duo doesn't have much time.
Good luck.
Thanks.
The year is now 2315, and the machine wars are finally over, but one little goblin fuck threatens to kick them back off again by reactivating a factory. It's now to Gretel to make sure this factory stays closed, but this time she's had a bit of an upgrade. I'm not quite sure what's the difference between the original and Mark II, but the new hood look is kinda cool, and Gretel's got to change it out once in a while. I mean, it has been almost 300 years since the last level she was in. Much like Aztec, this level is much more focused, with a few little branching paths for objectives and things like that. I can only guess this was one of the last missions to be made before the game was finished, and the devs just had to get this one out the door. Again, that's my guess anyway. That being said, Robotic Factory doesn't play around, and can become a bullet hell style level towards the end, thanks to a bunch of enemies spawning in all over the place, and this one wastes no time getting to it, with bolts bouncing all over the walls. As Gretel gains access to the inner processing level, and locates the Electro tool, all whilst making sure some glorified bins don't take the player off guard. That and it looks like some of Callus's lasers have made it all the way to the future. Robot Factory is classic TimeSplitters through and through, with there almost being nowhere to hide. Thanks to tight corridors and plenty of enemies never relenting, the Dark Machinist child isn't messing around. The Electro tool isn't only useful to stun enemies and charging robo monkeys, but it's also necessary to destroy energy nodes. Though this can be a chore while a bunch of bots are trying to claw at Gretel's ankles. Seriously, it feels like someone's waiting for the player at every turn, and once you make that turn, a bunch of enemies have spawned in. Rail robots and a bunch of drones also mix things up, but thanks to their size, they can be a bit more of a pain to take out. Entering the wider areas, this only gets more intense, thanks to those kind fellas with homing rocket launchers entering the mix. The game does show some mercy though, with the Dark Machinist child not really putting up much of a fight. Like most of the bosses, it's pretty simple, but this one's fixed to the wall so it's always in one place. Even if it does look a bit intimidating at first, with it looking like the insides of a chicken pie making machine that Rocky and Ginger had to dodge. But with that destroyed and the crystal in hand, it's time to jump through the portal and get to the present.
You made it!
Here you go.
Closing out the story, Cortez is finally back in the present with Corporal Hart, though it seems time has finally run out, as the Reaper splitters break into the main chamber. Disorientated from all the travelling and morphing into different souls, Corporal Hart steps in to save Cortez, and unfortunately, she meets her end. With that brief setup, it's time to grab the crystals and get the hell out of here, but not before triggering the self-destruct sequence.
Phase 3. Confirmed. Self-destruct sequence in progress.
Once triggered by a bunch of panels scattered about, time won't be on Cortez's side, and like Atom Smasher, this will be the major difference between difficulties, and will make some players question their life choices for sure. Playing on easy, Cortez has 10 minutes, but on normal and on hard, this goes down to 6 and 5 minutes. And while this level is pretty short, you honestly can't stop moving on hard, and even the extra minute given on normal doesn't really help much. There are sections where it's pointless to engage the enemy and just run, hoping not to take a lightning bolt in the back, and thanks to the plasma auto rifle, the player's gonna have to temper their shots, as this thing overheats quite often. And you can't just wait for this thing to cool down, because there's nowhere to hide and you have to keep moving. The space station doesn't exactly have much room to maneuver either, especially once you're at the bottom of the lift, because you've got to grab the spacesuit anyway. Honestly, I grab this thing as soon as I can. Oh, and for good measure, a bunch of auto turrets also ruin this mission. But getting past all of that and the decompression chamber, it's now time to give me a bit of PTSD, as it's time for another turret sequence, which is just here to slow us all down, let's be honest. I just wish there was something else here instead, like shooting a big boss splitter or something like that. But as this was the 2000s, a turret sequence is a must. Waiting for the final lift is just agonising, especially as all the player can do is watch those seconds tick away. And I won't lie, it took me a fair few tries before I got through this in under 6 minutes. But with that, we see Cortez escape in the nick of time, as the space station behind him explodes. Now he just needs to get the crystals back to Earth and find the general. Or so he thinks.
Take that! You want some of this?
Time to get out of here.
Much like the first game, TimeSplitters 2 comes packed with a bunch of challenges, but not as many this time. This is a good thing, as these don't feel as watered down or redundant like TimeSplitters 1, because in the first game they were basically just multiplayer modes, and they were there to flesh that first game out quite a bit, as the story mode was bare bones as fuck. So there's only 21 this go around to get the platinum, rather than 27. I know it doesn't sound that much less, but trust me, it makes all the difference. So like I did in the prior game, I'm going to run through them all now. There is also a little mode called Arcade League, but we'll talk about that in a bit. Even though there are less challenges in this game, that doesn't mean we get away from breaking glass, with the first set of 3 challenges being appropriately named Glass Smash. Taking up the role of a Russian soldier in Siberia, the mission here is to break all the windows of a grenade launcher, specifically the one attached to the Soviet S-47. Thankfully this one is pretty painless, and shouldn't take long to pop a gold. And speaking of trophies in this mode, I'm going to be referring to them quite a bit, not to confuse them with the trophies on the PlayStation level, but to avoid going back to challenges and replaying them. You might as well go for as many as you can, and sometimes even pop a few platinums. Breaking it through is the next challenge, and this is the same thing again, but with bricks. And it's much of the same, just swap the grenade launcher out for bricks. Thankfully, the devs gave us a break on the third challenge. With now the actual grenade launcher, the aim of stain removal is to destroy all the windows in Notre Dame. This is going to require a bit of trial and error, and some manual aiming, but still it's relatively painless compared to the challenges in the first game. Brains are back in business with the Behead the Undead group. Set on the compound map, which could honestly be an extension of the archives in GoldenEye. This is a throwback to the zombie challenges from TimeSplitters 1. Though as I mentioned earlier in the video, thankfully this isn't as harsh due to the zombies being reworked. Even with the very same sawn-off shotgun, this one is much easier, even in a smaller area. You can just shoot the zombies anywhere and kill them, but if you don't go for headshots, you're going to get less points. Eventually I just offered myself up at the end, because I got the platinum in this challenge. Sure, this one could be harder, but I'd actually say the devs got this mode right this time around. And it's still shocking to me that this wasn't considered as a multiplayer mode, with Horde mode only being 6 years away with Gears of War 2, but bless the poor henchman, he never gets out alive. Sergio's Last Stand is next up. All this Lion Tamer has is a loincloth and a tactical 12 gauge to hold off the flaming undead. Unfortunately, this one doesn't take full advantage of the circus, and not even most of the tent, with the area being arbitrarily restricted. But at least the tactical 12 gauge is a far superior weapon to deal with zombies. I also don't know if this was the intended tactic, but just running around in circles backwards is the way to go. And kiting the zombies is easy enough, though getting slapped will cause Sergio to set on fire, so watch out for that. It's Day of the Damned which will be the real challenge in this group. Set in the labs underneath the Siberian Dam, all Nikolai has to defend himself is his fists. This was one of the easier zombie challenges in the first game, but thanks to the area being much smaller now, it can get pretty crowded fast. And at the start this one does take a while to get going, but it can be quite entertaining watching the zombies kill each other as they try and get to you. But you might want to throw on a podcast or something for this one, just to drown out the endless slapping sound effects. Group 3 is something new entirely, as stealth wasn't in the first game, because the next 3 challenges revolve around stealth. So for anyone who wants to flex their stealth skills, well, these 3 challenges won't disappoint.
Hey!
There are a few things I find more satisfying in video games than taking out an entire base without being found out, and though silent but deadly might be brief, it perfectly distills that feeling. Oh, and you've got to blow the dish up too. Trouble at the Docks is more of the same, but this time, it takes advantage of the verticality of the map. Well, the opening section is Chicago anyway. A returning Lady Jane is trying to make her way through the Fauci Bro warehouse, so staying quiet will help with that, and ensure the player ends up with as many points as possible. With goons around every corner, this can take a few tries to get right.
Hey!
Chastity gets her chance to shine once again in Escape from Neon Tokyo, and what has become a pattern now, the third challenge of each group aims to ramp up the difficulty, now only with a temporal link, feeling a little bit like Metal Gear Solid, you know, when you used to look at that map rather than, you know, the game in front of you. I can't help feeling this challenge could have done with a few bots though, just to really mix things up. Ever wonder what it would be like to play Pac-Man in first person? Well, this next group has you covered. Gone Bananas is just that, as we take control of a rabid monkey, seeking its lost bananas. Someone over at Free Radical figured out the temporal uplink would help make first person Pac-Man a reality, and this works quite well. Monkey Business is more of the same, but this time with zombies. As they chase that pesky monkey around the map. Thankfully, they don't prove much of a threat, and can't keep up with the little bugger anyway. Playing with fire shakes up the formula though, with a monkey out and a burning wooden golem in. Now it's a race against time to grab as many bananas before the wooden golem burns. 24 bananas will net gold, and this challenge only lasts 30 seconds. The next group will test the player's skill with the dual analog sticks, and by that I mean their aim. Elijah Jones is back in the Wild West, and now this level has been turned into a shooting range. It's almost as if this level was meant to be one, and I'm sure anyone watching doesn't need a shooting range explained to them. Shooting the bad guy cutouts net points, and the friendly will take them away. Hitting the right spots will also net a clean 100 points. Fallout is the same again, but this time Marco's out for revenge as he shoots his way through the Chicago streets. But the final challenge is a sniper's paradise, or the Tommy guns there if that doesn't suit you. Now you don't walk through the level as you're kept stationary, so like a traditional shooting range. So far TimeSplitters 2 has nailed the variety and difficulty in these challenges, whereas by now the first game, things were becoming a bit of a slog. Saying that though, it's time to take a little trip down memory lane and pay a little homage to the first game, as each story mission consists of, well, point-to-point objectives. So this is what the next group of challenges will focus on. Badass Bus Pass takes place on a certain level that was made famous by a little zombie movie in the year 2000s.
All top left. Uh-huh. I was gonna say, reload? I'm on it. Since... Oh, nice shot. Thanks.
And I don't really have any words of wisdom here. Just grab the big old brain and get back as fast as possible, because the Reaper Splitters don't mess around. But Where Did the Batteries Go sees the debut of R107, and I only bring this one up because me and my friends always found this guy pretty funny. Well then, Future Perfect anyway.
I am your servant. I am your worker.
Getting down to the data disk can be a little hectic, with it being wall to wall down there. And the only thing is, once you get the disk, you've then got to go all the way back up, past even more robots, and now Splitters 2. So yeah, this one might take a few tries. Hit Me Baby One More Time. Christ, what the fuck did I just say? Sees Mr. Underwood finally get his turn to take down a horde of the undead. And you've got to give it to Free Radical. Even they take a dig at themselves in this group, just by the wording of story. But thank Christ the zombies didn't revert back to their old ways, because that would make this one impossible. I'm not sure how many zombies you can have on screen in this game, but it feels like a shitload. And then there's the undead priests shooting away as well, just to add another level of hell. After all that frantic rushing around, it's time to monkey around by taking a break and shooting some clay pigeons. Well, kind of, because the clay pigeons have been replaced by bloody monkeys. But even with that, this challenge is quite chilled, and to make this easier, run up to the balcony for a better vantage point. Monkey Mayhem sees Free Radical make use of their melon tech, and they're being carried by monkeys, but this time, you can't shoot them. The final challenge, Dam Buster, is a nice little nod to a classic, with shooting monkeys being the aim once again. The said monkeys come flying at Sergeant Shock as he's armed with a minigun and plenty of rounds to play with. And that's it, after this challenge, you're all done. And this was nowhere as painful as the last challenge in the prior game. But there are still more trophies to get. Arcade League was a new addition to TimeSplitters with TimeSplitters 2. Made up of a bunch of scenarios, over a bunch of the maps and modes. This basically simulates multiplayer, but without the humans, and a few added goals. So basically, this was challenge mode in the prior game, but with a new label on it. Modes like this were key in the pre-online era, to really squeeze every last penny out of a game. When you don't have 3 other mates crowded around your TV, this was a decent substitute. To have all this on one disc back in the day was quite cool, and it added a lot of value. The devs didn't need to put this mode back in, but they did, and they made it better. But they'll definitely add a few more hours onto your platinum journey. There are 3 leagues, Amateur, Honorary, and Elite. They feature 5 match sets, with 3 matches in each. Make sense? And there is no real need to cover each one in granular detail, unless this was a video game archive, or a walkthrough or something like that. And I know I've already gone into autistic detail so far, but I don't want this video to be like 2 hours long. But as these are tied to the overall platinum, I feel compelled to take a look at some of them, doubly so as they serve a way to talk about the classic arcade multiplayer. It's a real showcase of what's on offer here. The first match set is all about classic deathmatch, which some would say this is what TimeSplitters was made for. Combined with the cartoon-esque art style, this was the bedrock of the series. That and a fair few raunchy jokes that you just wouldn't see these days, and would probably offend someone online, but not on this channel. So I'm going to point to Halo as the game that got first-person shooting on the console right, but for the time, I'd argue TimeSplitters was up there as well. Yeah, I'm putting Free Radical up there with a legendary Bungie. Sure, it didn't have the same budget or reach, but for anyone that plays TimeSplitters, they just get it. And all this game needed was some killer weapons and a solid map design, and it had plenty of that. You can't take away from what the devs managed to achieve compared to their counterparts, and with so much to pull from thanks to the premise. There was no boundaries when it came to creativity either, because they had all of time and space to play with. So you could pick up a bunch of laser rifles and shoot some robots, grab a shotgun and take it to some zombies, or go to the Wild West and have a duel. The next set, Mode Madness, feels like a lucky dip, as it features regeneration, shrink and vampire. Regeneration has everyone's health, well, regenerate after a while. But this feels a bit redundant when it comes to the leech mode later. Shrink is deathmatch, but with a twist. The player in the lead stays normal size, whilst the rest shrink down, with last place being a tiny little fuck.
Hey, look me! Ow! Hey, what are you doing?
Vampire though, this is one of my all-time favourites. It is close to elimination, but with an added level of danger. Be it, everyone needs to keep getting kills, to fill their blood back up, otherwise they die. This one makes for a few frantic matches. The third set, It's a Blast, hints at what it might be about, with It's a Blast featuring a fair few explosives. It also has Leech and Thief. Leech is designed to get everyone out on the battlefield. There's no time for camping here, as the only way to get more health back is, well, to kill. It's tweaks like this that really shake up arcade multiplayer in the right way. Whereas Thief, for those looking for something different, killing your foes isn't enough. You have to go and take the coin they drop to get a point. Now I'm not sure if this type of mode was invented here, but I swear it's popped up in Call of Duty a fair few times. But things start to really get good with the fourth set. Too Hot to Handle introduces the virus mode, which I sunk a lot of time into over TimeSplitters 2 and Future Perfect. Without a doubt, this is the game mode me and my friends played the most. Think of it as a game of It, or Tag over in America, and then add guns. One player or bot starts with the virus, and then they have to infect everyone else. Thankfully, this can be spotted with a handy green flame, and honestly, I want this mode in every online shooter. Hell, I almost want TimeSplitters to come back just for this mode, so I could play it endlessly, like I still do Left 4 Dead. The final set of Amateur League is all about teamwork, which makes the game a little less frantic, but it doesn't take away from what makes TimeSplitters work. Of course there is the standard deathmatch, but this also features zones, which is kind of like King of the Hill mode that we'd see in Gears of War a few years later. There are 4 zones, and the more you capture, the faster your points accumulate. Getting more makes the numbers go up faster. The final match of this league will be in Assault mode, which is by far the most ambitious multiplayer mode. It depends on what side you're on and what map you're playing. This mode essentially boils down to take or destroy the point of interest, and then move on. Kind of like a tower defense in an arcade shooter. For this one you seize the middle ground, then destroy the fuel supply, and finally destroy the computers. This might sound simple, but there was nothing like this back on the PS2. It really elevated TimeSplitters above its contemporaries. Honorary League kicks off with a set named Maximus, and if you know your cinema, then you already know this is all about Gladiator mode.
Are you not entertained?
To win this one, the player needs to obtain the mantle of Gladiator, and then get killing, as the Gladiator is the only one that can score points. The second series is all about being the last man, woman or thing standing. Elimination mode swaps out points for lives, and honestly, should have been called Last Stand, though it can add a new layer to arcade gameplay, as you get rewarded for surviving, not the most kills. In standard multiplayer anyway. Here in League, it's all about getting those kills fast. Burns and Bangs is the third set in Honorary League, and it can lead to the player becoming a bit of a pyromaniac, especially when melting those snowmen. But in the Chinese level, the gimmick will be rounding up Renegade Calamari, though Rocket Man changes up the formula just a bit. It's Sergio versus 10 Venus Stars, and well, just listen to this. I would love to know how many parents walked in on this back in the day. Like honestly, why are they so loud and why do they keep moaning? The fourth match set is a cool throwback for those who know. Poor Big Tony is in hospital trying to get a bit of work done when those dreaded Duckman Drakes are back. The fact that someone put this in here just shows how much the devs cared about their art. Mr. Handy also rears his ugly hand, and this abomination needs to be put down, preferably with lead. It's all about teams again in this final match set, with the B series. 2 of the 3 are a standard affair, because they just simulate multiplayer matches, though the third match brings back Assault, and this makes up for how bog standard Hangar looks. Even though I'm not against military bases in my games, I was brought up on tactical military shooters after all. Destroying all the autoguns can get a bit sweaty, especially as the opening is quite cramped. Though opening the hangar doors and destroying the barrels flies by, and I should probably note that friendly bots don't really do much. They're more cannon fodder than anything else. They soak up all the bullets while Kitten Celeste gets the job done. As for the Elite League, it continues to offer a fair few challenges, like putting Harry Tipper up against 10 Mary Beth Casey's, because look at the dude, he's a chick magnet. Then there is that team deathmatch with bricks only, as Nikki and Jinky go up against a bunch of crypt zombies. Personally, I'd rather slappers only. There's also going one-on-one with a stone golem on the site map, which is a bit more annoying than you think. This last league is mainly just a bunch of gimmicks, and most don't really put up a challenge, bar a few that are just annoying. It seems like Doke was having fun with the making of these though, especially when you look at the descriptions he wrote. Just look at Golden Fires for example. After the main story took place, Celeste and Jungle Queen basically battled it out for the attention of Harry Tipper, so how better to solve this issue than with a cat fight? You've got to love the early 2000s sometimes. Then there's Big Top Blowout, which is rockets only, though anything to kill Mr. Giggles. Fuck that dude.
Mr. Giggles, wanna see my pocket? Ooh, yeah! Mr. Giggles, wanna see my pocket?
Oh, and in the world of TimeSplitters, the scientists fight back, because unlike Half-Life, they're not going to be taken out by those guards. And it's a neat little reference. Rounding things off, Life tries to find a way in Aztec Dinosaur Hunter, which is also another reference, this time to Turok. You know that shooter with all the fog? Oh, and dinosaurs. Finally Dead Fraction as well, you know, another reference. Unfortunately both Red Fraction and TimeSplitters would both be gobbled up by the Embracer Group, and we all know how that went. Weirdly enough, the platinum is pretty painless in TimeSplitters 2, compared to the first game in Spoilers, Future Perfect, though Atom Smasher is a standout for its difficulty spike. On easy it's pretty, well, easy because of the time limit, but on normal and hard, the timer is hellish. Just a simple addition of a timer throws the gameplay loop out of whack, forcing the player to keep pushing, otherwise they're never going to deactivate those bombs. This is also the same for the final level as well, as Space Station is a real clusterfuck. And thanks to the time limit, each time I play, I honestly barely make it to the ship in time. So I guess the devs did their job here, you know, making the final level a challenge. But Arcade League and Challenge mode, they're a breeze. For the most part anyway, bar the odd challenge here and there. Thankfully you don't have to get golds in every single one. Otherwise that would be a nightmare. The brick throwing levels are tedious, but it's so much more streamlined than the first game. I never want to go to Chinese and break glass ever again. Speaking of Chinese, Nicky Jinky Bricky is bloody frustrating, because aiming bricks is hell. It's hard enough to do to windows, let alone a bunch of crypt zombies. And when you've got none of the f***s throwing bricks at you too, god that took a while. Golem Guru can also just get in the bin, because the golem just tanks a bunch of damage, and I think the worst thing is, this bot knows it, and takes advantage of the situation. But other than those gripes, this platinum is pretty painless. TimeSplitters 2 was a real game changer. Not only was it capitalising on TimeSplitters, but it was capitalising on GoldenEye. Blending both of them together to make something brand new. And this time we got a pretty fleshed out story, with a proper mission structure, and a bunch of objectives. It really is night and day playing TimeSplitters 2 after TimeSplitters 1. And really, this is an example of a perfect sequel. Well, I say that for TimeSplitters 2 in 2002, because when it came to Future Perfect, that game has legendary status. Those at Free Radical really cemented themselves as a new studio with this game. Their gamble leaving Rare to make something new really paid off. And I've just got to personally thank the devs as well. You gave me and my mates so many hours of entertainment. And even though GoldenEye was an all-timer, TimeSplitters 2 was a suitable replacement, especially for the PS2, and shouldn't be forgotten when we talk about all-time FPS console greats. Cause Halo gets its flowers quite a bit, but I feel like TimeSplitters needs a few more too. Even though this isn't some secret series that no one's played, TimeSplitters 2 sold well and reviewed well, in an era where devs could experiment and turn out games pretty fast. And it came from England, so there's that as well. It's got an extra bit of charm. And as for my next video, well, it'll be TimeSplitters Future Perfect. So thanks to anyone that's made it this far. I've not cut this one down yet, but I can tell it's going to be a long one. So if you have got this far, why not help a lad out and give me a like and maybe a sub? It really does help a lot, and I'd love to break 1,000 subs in 2025. Anyway, that's enough from me. I've been Benroy, and until the next video, no more games. They just don't make them like this anymore. A gameplay focused shooter with a comedic edge just seems like it shouldn't work, but it really does.
They discovered the wheel. Clever humans.
Especially as we don't really get comedy in a lot of our major games. Well, bar those brilliant South Park RPGs anyway. But combine comedy with one of the best arcade shooters out there, up until the point of 2005, and well, ever since, and you have a game that holds up like no other.
All in one. Skullbuster.
This was also an era where players could really expect a whole bunch of new features with a sequel. Sure, this was TimeSplitters once again, but now, refined. Don't get me wrong, TimeSplitters 2 set a lot of groundwork, but I really think Free Radical hit their high point here. For example, we had fully animated reload actions now, blood was a thing, and nearly every weapon was redesigned. Map Maker was expanded on even more, and there was no less than 150 playable characters now, plus a wider array of new maps to play with, as well as some old classics. And don't worry, Chinese made the cut.
Skullbuster.
Yes, some multiplayer modes are subsequently cut, but they really weren't missed at all, and they more watered down the experience of multiplayer anyway. When you really think about it, it isn't often that a series, or an overall franchise, gets to end on a high. Well, not since trilogies are out the window, because those fronting the cash always want more. Why just make 3 of the thing, when you can make 6, or 10, or hell, several a year, until the kernel of what made the idea so great isn't even there anymore? Or water it down to such a degree that it's not special or unique. Now I realise this already sounds like an old man shouting at clouds, but just look at what gets greenlit in the game and movie spaces. The box office is in the toilet at the moment. That isn't to say that indies aren't holding up their own though, because they really are, especially in the survival horror genre. And then looking at games like Trepang 2, that used to be what got the big budget. Now that's also relegated to the indie space. I'm just trying to point out the fact that publishers like EA wouldn't front the cash for this anymore. For what they were trying to achieve, Free Radical had finally got there. TimeSplitters Future Perfect is refined. Like any blacksmith worth their salt, Free Radical spent years hammering away at the formula until they perfected it. After having almost spent a decade with the series, this is the sort of thing players would come to expect, with a bunch of trilogies popping off in the mid-2000s, and in the early 2010s, with a lot of the final games being worth a wait. Gears of War, Halo, Uncharted, and even Mass Effect to an extent. And all these trilogies have something in common. They came out in record time, especially compared to the industry now. Just look at their follow-ups or what the studios would pursue after. They either flopped, were mid, or took a whole generation to emerge. Something was really lost towards the 7th generation of video games. I don't know, by the end of that generation, it seemed like a bunch of the big studios started chasing devs like Naughty Dog, which turned the industry into a graphical cinematic arms race. But that really is a topic for another video, when I eventually cover one of my favourite games of all time, which is the main culprit for this and a bit divisive these days thanks to its sequel. Winding back to TimeSplitters, maybe we shouldn't be bummed that this series is gone. It has been 20 years by this point, the year in 2025 in which this video series was made. I, like so many, wish we got that mystical TimeSplitters 4, but thanks to current day business practices, it doesn't look like the rights holders can get the numbers to work for what they want. But then again, the Embracer Group has barely fucking stayed afloat since they gobbled up so much IP, only in a hope to get investments from people with more money than sense. They even had the license to make games set in Middle Earth, but couldn't even get that going. And if you ever look at the list of IP they held, it's a real treasure trove of the past. And with all the games they planned to get going, they would have just cannibalized each other, because we don't have enough time to play the games that are out right now. And that's not accounting for marketplaces being flooded by slop every day. You know the guys that cancelled TimeSplitters 4? They had to split into 3 separate entities: Asmode, Coffee Stain and Friends, and Middle Earth Enterprises, and Friends? Why does Middle-earth need friends? It's all a bit of a mess, and for those interested, Steve Ellis does lay out bullet points to what went wrong, documenting the rise and fall of Free Radical, both times, over on GameIndustry.biz. But hey, at least we got Future Perfect, and even more recently, all 3 TimeSplitters games on modern hardware, so at least they won't be lost to time, unless we all get EMP'd and then everything's gone. And we all get shipped off to fight in the machine wars to come. Like so many games or series locked in legal limbo, much like GoldenEye 007 in the past years. Going back to playing all these games for the retrospective has gone to remind me how special this franchise was. Not saying I forgot or anything, but you know, you got to replay these once in a while to remember. Hell, it had been almost 20 years since I played TimeSplitters 1 when I went back and played that, but 2 put Free Radical on the map, meaning they had the clout to escape IDOS for the big leagues, with EA fronting the cash for the 3rd game, and sadly the final installment. But back in the day, this seemed like the right move to take. IDOS didn't really push TimeSplitters 2, and those over at Free Radical thought EA would make a real difference. And they did, but not enough for EA. And we all know EA aren't afraid of binning off a studio if they don't work out. Hell, BioWare are only around because they made Mass Effect at this point. Like Square Enix, they're rarely ever happy with the results of their titles. But then if you get deluded and think every game is going to make the money of FIFA and Madden, well, I guess I can see their point of view. Just a little. Like, how did they not see the promise of Dead Space remake? And why was a follow-up not greenlit? That series could have seriously rivaled Resident Evil in the modern age. But it's in the bin, I guess, so let's just forget about Dead Space remake. Dead Space is dead. And I'll always blame Dead Space 3 for that. I hate that fucking game.
Is there a garbage chute? Trash compactor? Yeah, there is.
If you can't have viable cards in Ultimate Team, or whatever, then I guess EA is just out of the video game business for now. Well, apart from their odd side projects here and there, the EA of then didn't get to kill Free Radical or TimeSplitters, but they wanted to change it for sure. And at some points in this game you can almost see that, as EA does what EA has done forever now, chase trends. Devs have gone on the record to say that execs from EA wanted this one to be a lot more serious, but those at Free Radical somehow negated this corporate minefield. Somehow, and then they gave us this true diamond of a title. Just looking at the first level or one set in the future, this seems like what EA wanted, and my guess is what the devs showed EA so they could get to the fun stuff, like the romps with Harry Tipper and Joe Beth Casey. But most of the levels have the charm that Free Radical is known for by this point.
Cortez, this is hardly the time.
And some levels being a bit more serious and muted and drabby and dark and dim, they're barely low points. They're just a lot more noticeable when EA are fronting the cash. And while sure I might love this game more than the prior one, you can clearly see that TimeSplitters 2 is basically all Free Radical, with them only getting help with the cutscenes, whilst 3 has something stripped away, to be more appealing to a wider audience. Sometimes you do need to find the Free Radical charm within a level.
The miners broke through into a chamber and found what the boss has been looking for.
What, they found this crystal stuff?
Yeah. Apparently the crystals glow with some weird inner light.
What, like a lava lamp?
No, Victor, you damn fool!
After TimeSplitters Future Perfect, they would go to strip everything away that made their games unique, with the now infamous haze. I won't get into that game as it requires its own video entirely. I've not played that thing in so long, I can barely remember what happens. I just know there's like nectar that goes into them and they get angry or see things differently. A bit like the Pyro in Team Fortress 2. So as I've done with the prior 2 games, I'm going to take a look at this game in a pseudo-retrospective type way, recounting what it's like to get the platinum and seeing every little nook and cranny in this game. Yes, that meant going through challenge mode and arcade league once again, and some of them here are a little bit more tricky. Anyway, I'm Ben Roy, and join me as I take a deep dive into the 3rd and final game in the TimeSplitters trilogy, TimeSplitters Future Perfect.
No, don't! Get down!
The list consists of 8 bronze trophies, 10 silver trophies, and 7 gold trophies, which means Future Perfect has the most of any of the trilogy, and these trophies are a lot more robust, with there being even more miscellaneous trophies. As a layman who's never been involved with game development, but as someone who's sunk in a hell of a lot of hours into them, I can only guess there were more trigger points for devs to pop trophies in this game. That being said, looking at the miscellaneous trophies, I can't help but wonder what could have been if these games just had a bit more budget when it comes to porting all 3, like you could have trophies based on the new driving mechanics, or pop when you beat a mini boss.
I'm gonna need therapy after this.
hell even blasting away zombies across all the modes. This could have given this list an extra edge, but please never go to the lengths of Dead Rising or Left 4 Dead again. I never got around to killing 53,594 zombies in Dead Rising, but I actually met the criteria on Left 4 Dead over on the 360, even if I did borrow my sister's hairband and tie it around the controller, leaving that thing whacking at a door all day. Sometimes you just gotta go to extra lengths to get those trophies and achievements. However, there isn't really such trophy in Future Perfect, with the bulk of them being tied to playing or beating the story missions, on normal or hard, and it's a nice spread of 5 bronze, 5 silver, and 3 gold trophies. 5 more trophies are tied to Arcade League and Challenge Mode, with Future Perfect actually being more stricter than TimeSplitters 2, with Amateur requiring all matches to be beaten on bronze or above, Honorary requiring all silver above, and Elite gold or above. Oh, and along the way it's best to get as high a score as possible, as 10 platinum trophies are needed, all across Arcade League, for another gold trophy. As for the challenges, well, get ready to sit down and pay attention, because now simply beating them or coming first isn't enough. Every challenge now needs to be beaten with a gold, which I won't lie, can be a bit of a grind, but that pales in comparisons when looking at another trophy on this list, as you'll need to do all that and more to unlock every character in this game, because a lot of characters will be unlocked playing this game on normal, but you're going to have to play on hard to unlock the final character, Karma Kalos. Thankfully there's a workaround though, just replay the first mission and last on hard, and it'll unlock. Bit sneaky, but if it's in the code, well, it's fair game. Gone are the days of when you'd enter a cheat code to unlock these all straight off the bat, but I won't lie, unlocking each one as you go is a lot more satisfying. Map Maker also makes a return to the trophy list, with it simply requiring the player to make a map and then play on it. I know I skipped over this feature in TimeSplitters 2, and probably won't spend much time on it here either, but I can't deny just how impressive this feature is. Once me and my mates were a little over the maps that were on hand, we just went and made our own maps, for what felt like years. Most of these just came down to maps made for virus mode. We'd make a bunch of choke points to see how long we'd last against those green flame covered bastards. The last few trophies after this are really clean up. Impressing Harry Tipper with your stealth skills will pop a silver.
Hey, pretty groovy work, space dude. Looks like you've done this before. Cool.
So will winning a spin on Kalos' slot machine. Killing zombies with a pool ball also nets a final silver,
Aim for their heads, Cortez.
which takes advantage of the new temporal link, but I'll run that down later. Splitting in the nick of time, just to make Cortez proud, will pop a bronze.
All they've done is pervert nature, and they paid the price.
Which leaves the final bronze for saving the past Cortez in the time loop sections, and I found the section on the train the easiest to do here. I don't know, some of the others just felt a little bit more fiddly.
We make a pretty good team. That's what I said too. But think about it. Where would you be if I hadn't shown up back there? You're right. I know.
And just looking at these extra trophies, it seems like after a while, whoever made this list just got to a certain level and just gave up. So yeah, we could have probably got a lot more trophies in this game, but at least we got the game on modern hardware, so I can't complain that much. But this is a video online, so I've got to complain just a little bit. But with that, I should probably take a deep dive into the story of TimeSplitters one last time.
Well, okay then. It's the red button.
But I can't help but noticing looking back at TimeSplitters Future Perfect, it just goes to show how much time has changed, which you would expect as this was 20 years ago. And I'm not here saying that things have changed for the worst, because I'm not a doomer or anything like that. There's a lot of great games that still come out today, but just looking at the maps and roster on offer here, you can't help but think that this would be tied up to a season pass now. Or you would have to buy each individual skin for something like $20 or £20, or 40,000 million yen, and then 10 gabillion rupees.
Fuck you up in a gangster style.
Hell, this will probably date this video in a few years, as map packs were still all the rage by the end of the 8th generation. Now they're just drip fed for free because they want those microtransactions at you, which is a good thing as it used to segment the player base quite a bit. Could you imagine if Free Radical got a TimeSplitters 4 out, but then the Embracer group would make them charge for alternative skins, for like Cortez, Harry Tipper, and fuck it, even the Gingerbread Man? We'll never know now though, but you just know the monkey would end up getting the brand tie-in skin, making him Iron Man or a Jedi or something like that. Or we could get a Dom Toretto skin for Cortez. Maybe that would work. I should stop going on about this before he gives anyone any fucking ideas. Future Perfect and Free Radical were just too damn good to the players.
What? Oh!
Let's go!
Oh yeah, I'm ready!
This being the third game in the trilogy, there's only really 2 ways to go. End on a cliffhanger, or tie everything up in a nice neat bow. Nothing was left hanging. The devs ended the Great War against the TimeSplitters, but also added a few more flavours to mix it up towards the end. Because sure, the TimeSplitters have been a formidable enemy all this time, for 2 whole games even if one was a mad dash or a bag, but in the final act, Cortez comes against more evolved TimeSplitters, the Berserker Splitter, and this is the greatest threat to humanity yet. As Cortez returns to Earth, the situation has gotten bad, with his home planet resembling a wasteland, torn apart by a never-ending war. Now everything is focused on the rebel base, as an army of Berserker Splitters are between Cortez and getting to the General. Was this just a coincidence, or were they being triggered by something? Or someone to try and stop Cortez getting the crystals to the General? Was someone behind this all along, causing so much pain and destruction for their own personal gain? Well, yeah, this time there isn't just an endless wave of alien faces. Jacob Crow is the big bad now, and the reason this is all happening in the first place. He created the TimeSplitters, all while searching for immortality, but we'll learn about that as we go through the levels. Throwing Crow in doesn't feel like a last minute addition either, even if it kind of is, as he wasn't mentioned at all in those last games. But again, TimeSplitters 1 was just a mad bag rush, so I'm just going to say I'm happy with his inclusion. I just wish there were more TimeSplitters in a TimeSplitters game. It also adds a human element to it, even if Crow is a slime ball.
And exactly where do I get this time device?
That and Cortez is now a fully fledged character. The man has a proper voice actor, and boy, does Tom Clark Hill knock it out of the park with this one.
You get dental?
Yeah.
That's good.
Combined with the direction of David Doak and Steve Ellis, as well as spot-on writing by Andrew Lawson, there's never a dull moment in the cutscenes, and in various in-game vignettes as well. To this day, there's still moments in this game that make me laugh out loud. Now, does that mean I've not grown since 2005? Or maybe this is just one special game made by a real special team? Or maybe it's just personal bias? Anyway, it's time to split, and for one last time, take a deep dive into the levels.
Time to split. Ouch! That's not cool, man.
Starting off, we get a voiceover from one of the new main characters in the series, Anya.
The year is 2401. Humankind finds itself locked in a mortal struggle with the TimeSplitters.
She also doubles as the love interest to our hero, Cortez. Now on his way back to Earth, with 9 stolen time crystals, Cortez doesn't have long before he can hand them over to the General.
This is Cortez.
Sergeant Cortez. Welcome home, sir. I'll patch you through to the General.
With the intent of using them to go back and destroy them, essentially ending the war before it ever had a chance to begin. Kinda like X-Men Days of Future Past. Now don't ask me how this is meant to work. It's a time travel story after all. There's always going to be a plot hole here and there, even though this one's solid. Though as Cortez makes his final approach, he's shot down by a laser or two, ultimately bringing him down in the wastelands.
Don't worry about me, General. I can...
Starboard turbine failure. Initiating emergency system.
His presence has stirred up a horde of Berserker Splitters, and these ones are more aggressive than usual. Also, while Cortez comes crashing down, a shadowy figure is watching from a distance. Did this guy have something to do with the crash? I wonder. Upside down in the wreckage, Cortez seems to be alright, and so are the crystals. Here to escort Cortez back to the base are Private Hicks and a couple of other foot soldiers.
Ooh, that's gotta hurt! You okay, Sarge? Come on, Sarge, we've gotta get you back to base. Whatever you did really stirred up the splitters.
For the longest time, I wondered why no one referenced Corporal Hart here. Like, was a sacrifice forgotten or something? Whilst playing this game to capture footage, I noticed that they actually do. It's just Cortez that doesn't mention her, as one of the soldiers in the background mentions her during a gunfight.
Say, where's Corporal Hart?
Corporal who?
Nah, never mind.
But as I mainly played this in co-op back in the day, that's probably why I missed it, as it's more of an Easter egg than anything else. Like all great opening levels, Time to Split is a tutorial in disguise, which will get the player back up to speed, and bring in some new ones, because that's what EA was banking on. This is kinda necessary as well, as the gunplay's been overhauled. It's so refined now, it feels almost like a modern shooter, with aiming and melee attack now being on every weapon. Also, I'm pretty sure every weapon has an alternate fire mode, of some sort anyway, just to shake it up. Getting back into the action fast, Cortez and Hicks don't come up against TimeSplitters, but instead hooded men in their way. Wearing all black, the masks on their face have an eye on them. These are time assassins, but I won't dive into them just yet. Just for now, they act as fodder enemies, before the TimeSplitters mothership comes crashing down.
All units, the bridge has been destroyed. Use alternate bridge to rally points.
Coming down! Yeehaw!
Come on, Sarge!
Oh, and watch out for that bridge that blows up too. Along the way, several of these Space Marines are taken out.
Too many! I need help! They got Jameson!
And you can find a plasma auto rifle, which is a real standout weapon in this game. It heats up like the prior game, but now it feels so much more balanced. It also sounds and looks awesome. you can really hear and see the money put into Future Perfect, even if this game's a lot more serious, with its tones more muted, and the colour palette too, which as I mentioned was probably an order from the top. All means to trick the execs into thinking they were getting a more of a serious game, as a lot more levels get a little less serious and play things more loose. You know, just like TimeSplitters was meant to be.
This is great! They don't suspect a thing, spaceman.
Rather than just trying to compete with modern shooters all the time. On at this point I should probably mention that grenades have been tweaked too, in the sense they work like Call of Duty, or well, every other shooter now, as they can be thrown with one press of a button, rather than having to cycle to them. This doesn't really sound revolutionary now, as it's been a staple for like 15 years, but it was one of the many changes to the series. As the mothership comes crashing down, I can't help but think this could have been a secondary objective. That or defending the bridge, something like that. Yes, I know this would conflict with a certain level later, but there's an absence of secondary objectives in the third TimeSplitters game. Now straight up I don't blame the devs for doing this, because as much as I appreciate the extra content, why have it missable? They should and did put TimeSplitters best foot first, and made everything available. This means that levels no longer end earlier on lower difficulties, and all objectives are now mandatory. Bar maybe one, but I'll get to that. This breaks from the trend that was started in GoldenEye, and I'll defend it because you can't keep to the same rigid format forever. You gotta keep reinventing yourself once in a while, whilst keeping a few seeds of what made you, your content or your art appealing in the first place. And really if I was a dev I'd want all my work to be seen on screen, because I bet a lot of people played TimeSplitters 2 on easy and missed a whole bunch of game. Like Return to Planet X in the second game. I choose this because it looks like the first level in Future Perfect. Half that level is gone if you play on easy. That and Siberia is way more fleshed out. So ultimately, I think this was the way to go. Turning a corner, those time assassins don't give up, as they take out another member of the squad, Paul Miller.
Through. Miller! Oh! Lost Miller!
But now it's time to avenge him with a new and improved sci-fi sniper rifle. Aiming in, there's no longer the sway from before, or the reticle trying to revert back to the centre of the screen, which fought the player at every turn.
They just keep coming!
This makes for an easier aiming experience overall, but washes away a bit of the arcade feel from the second game.
The base is just up ahead. Come on!
With those assassins out of the way, it's time to come head to head with a TimeSplitter.
You okay, Sarge? More of them! Good shooting, soldiers.
These berserkers are far more tough than in the prior game, though they still act quite similar, with them turning invisible and firing lightning, just like Uncle Palps. Their designs look way more animalistic now as well. With these things looking seriously vicious, we've come so far from those burned bacon bits looking bastards in the first game. But I will say I miss the look from TimeSplitters 2. They look so much more like aliens in that game, with these ones now resembling more of a test subject or something like that. Maybe that's a hint, I don't know. But it's a shame that the Reaper splitters were omitted from TimeSplitters Future Perfect entirely. It's a weird choice and I don't know why they were cut out. Maybe the devs just wanted to forget about them or something like that. Look, I get forgetting the bacon bits guys, but the Reaper splitters look cool. After surviving just one berserker splitter, it's now time to come up against a whole shitload of them. But because this was the mid-2000s, it's time to fire up a good old-fashioned turret sequence. But honestly, this was needed for this level, as those buggers come out the goddamn walls.
They're coming out of the walls! They're coming out of the goddamn walls!
Come on, Cortez, pour it on!
And after that, it's time to take on even more of them at the entrance of the base. Hold them back with everything that Cortez has. He, Hicks and the rest of the Space Marines barely make it through this, though they seem to be getting some additional help from somewhere. I wonder who it could be.
Hey! We're getting fire support from somewhere!
At this point I've just remembered I haven't gone through the objectives of this level, like I did in the prior game. I know I could just go back and edit this in earlier, but the objectives aren't really a major part now, as TimeSplitters Future Perfect is a lot more narrative focused, which means you aren't really going off to other areas and searching for things, or you know, going for secondary objectives. So if you just go with the flow of the level, Annie's going to tell you what to do anyway. It's very rare the player will even get to divert from the main path in Future Perfect, as a lot of the time they're guided by an AI companion.
The General's waiting, Sarge! Make a run for the base! We'll try and buy you some time!
Or when they bugger off, Annie is always in your ear. Meeting the General at the base, it's clear the game is a lot more focused than the one prior, as they set up everything you need to know in this cutscene, and the opening one. And as I mentioned cutscenes, now each level has at least 2 cutscenes, with some having even a few sprinkled in, which is more than adequate to bookmark every level. This is a good thing. With now a trail to follow, rather than a bunch of TimeSplitters scattered throughout time, this game takes a linear path.
Now I've located energy residue in numerous places, but the highest concentration is right here.
You start in the past and progressively get back to the present. It's much less of a scattershot this time, and we probably have EA to thank for this as well. Laying out what will be ahead for Cortez, and your hands over the uplink, and sends him on his way.
Here, put out your arm.
What's that?
It's an uplink to the time machine. I've set it to take you to the island just before its destruction.
Because unfortunately, he's the General's best man.
I should have guessed. Find the crystals and destroy the lot. How hard could it be?
So with that, it's time for Cortez to go on one last adventure through time and space. Travelling back in time to Scotland in 1924, this mission conveniently takes place between both world wars. Now I get the team at Free Radical wanted to avoid the obvious time period and, you know, the big bads of the time, but I don't think it was low hanging fruit, especially for the time. Cortez going after Nazis rather than Nazi adjacent enemies would have been just fine, but with that small gripe out of the way, it's time to meet up with a familiar friend.
I say, what are you doing way out here, old chap?
Or is he a friend? I don't think he's aware of what happened before. Does he know he was possessed? Best not tell him. Captain Ash is no longer off exploring. He's on a mission of the highest importance. Though weirdly enough, just 4 years before this, Captain Ash was off in the Aztec jungles, having left the Navy life behind. So even if this might look like an overlooked aspect to the story, once Ash gets to his objective, it all becomes clear why he went back to the Navy. Because who wouldn't go to such lengths to rescue the Jungle Queen?
You Tarzan, me Jane. Let me show you how we do it in the jungle.
Fun fact, this also happens to be the only secondary objective in the entire game, meaning this entire feature in Future Perfect is based on Captain Ash getting a little too horny. When playing on co-op, she's omitted from the level entirely, which leaves no reason for Captain Ash to be here in the first place. But then again, maybe he was joining the Navy because a little man over in Germany was getting a bit too angry. As for their main objectives, they flow the story, as Cortez will need to infiltrate the castle and protect Captain Ash along the way. But from here I'm going to hold off going through them all like in TimeSplitters 2, because they get revealed as events unfold. Anya gets Cortez to the right time, but not quite the right place.
What the? Any chance of a hand?
As he drops in on the old chap out at sea, here this really sets out how each level is going to start.
I say, what are you doing way out here, old chap?
I'm supposed to be on that island.
Well, once they change time period anyway. Cortez just happens to drop in on events taking place, and then they always escalate once the pitch black looking time traveller gets involved.
But, well, that was my best pipe, you bounders! No, don't!
Get down!
Good shot, old man.
I don't think much of this weapon.
Because Cortez wasn't meant to shoot that one. Thankfully Ash has a spare pistol though, and this gun is an alternate fire form. Pressing up will attach a silencer and a scope, and really who were not for this? Climbing up the hill towers a castle, and a battle raging above, really setting the scene for the last level. It's said the castle itself was based on one from Where Eagles Dare, a brilliant World War II movie starring Clint Eastwood and Richard Burton, with the courtyard being an exact copy. And the devs even tried to emulate that one sequence where Eastwood grabbed 2 MP40s and mowed down a bunch of Nazis. Once again, the devs wearing their influences on their sleeves. Before gaining access to the castle, the devs also pay homage to silent movies of old, as Ash just seems to be at the right spot to avoid a pickle.
I say!
Unfortunately for the two, a portcullis is being dropped, so they're going to have to play a crane game to get out of this trap. And I just have to mention how silly the turret operator looks, because once he gets pulled out of the submarine, you can see his little legs poking out the bottom. And while in this trap, Anya points out that these guns are a bit too advanced for the time. This all makes sense of what happens later.
This gun is not on file for this time period. It seems to have been custom built.
Now it's time for the devs to show off the new vehicle mechanics, with either Cortez or Ash driving up the hill, with the other being on the turret at the back. It's a short-lived sequence, but I guess it looked good for highlight reels in 2005.
Hold tight! Aha! Coming through!
With the drawbridge up, I'm now thinking of Death Stranding 2 on the beach, and how mad that last trailer was. Anya also informs Cortez that the new uplink has an extra feature. He can now move objects with his freaking mind. No, not really. He uses the Force. The uplink is just like the gravity gun from Half-Life 2, in glove form, somewhat 20 years before Valve had used this in Half-Life Alyx, and then again in Death Stranding. Once you play the director's cut, it's a neat addition that always felt a little underused. But again, like those vehicle sections, I guess it worked for a highlight reel and, list the new features in the game. Back when you get all this information in the magazine and just count down the days until you can play this new game. Everything in those magazines always sounded so exciting back then. It's used a lot more in the post-game activities, to be fair. The temporal uplink also replaces the fists, as punching isn't needed anymore, as you can melee attack with each weapon now. Blowing through the main doors, the castle is now well and truly infiltrated, but this means his partnership is up for now.
I have to signal the Navy. You go ahead.
Cortez won't be alone for long though, as he's greeted by, well, himself.
You're me. I knew you'd say that. Here. A key.
Future Cortez is here to drop down a key to help the current, and then past Cortez to get through the mission. Where does he get the key from though? Who knows? This segment becomes more fleshed out of each level, and really takes advantage of the time travel premise, helping TimeSplitters really stand out. And whenever two Cortezes are on screen, it's always interesting, and you just have to wonder what the devs could have cooked up with a fourth entry. In the cellar, Cortez comes across an interesting fellow, the self-proclaimed
bestest guard. Without me, no guarding. All rubbish guarding. God of guards and girls.
Best leave him to finish the rest of his cellar off, because the island isn't going to be around much longer anyway. Hooking back up with Ash, Cortez gets a glimpse of someone that might be in charge. The leader, as we'll call him for now, escapes via a secret passage in the fireplace, before a time portal pops up, and of course, Cortez jumps through.
Check this out. Hey, isn't that me?
Sure looks like it.
Yeah, that's right where I was when the other me gave me that.
Even with the risks, Cortez doesn't seem all that bothered.
All the time travel in the area must have destabilized the time field. Your future self must have... Cortez, wait!
Catching up with Captain Ash for the third and final time, we now see why he came all this way, as the Jungle Queen was taken captive and is locked away in the prison, and Cortez should really help this love-struck couple out, and has quite a funny tongue-in-cheek aspect to it. But sadly, this is where we're going to leave Captain Ash, and we never get to hang out with the fisticuffs loving old bean again. Maybe one day someone will get the rights to the TimeSplitters, and we'll see him again. But if not, I'm happy we helped this old lad out.
They made you do what?
Like a monkey? Those bounders!
Right, well, I think we'd better be going, old boy. Thanks again for your help. Good luck with, whatever it is you're doing here. Cheerio!
Boss fights are back, and this time in the form of a tank. This is going to require the secondary fire of the KSMG, with a few of these rocket-propelled grenades that stall the tank, so Cortez can place some dynamite onto it and finish this thing for good. It looks imposing at first, but it's quite a simple boss fight. It doesn't take too much to stall the tank, and there's plenty of cover, and once it is, it's a sitting duck. And side tangent, but I've just mentioned ducks, so I've just got to quickly talk about them, because this reminds me of old Big Tony, and his never-ending battle against Duckman Drakes. Thinking back on it, was this a reference to The Sopranos all along? If so, it's a real deep cut, and if not, I'm just putting it out there. The duck episode came out before that first game, so the timelines add up.
You showed us yesterday.
It's great!
Anyway, going onto the island, it's time for Cortez to finally confront the leader.
I thought I told you not to interrupt me.
Whoa!
The old bugger just vanished, which means he can also travel through time as well. But how? Cortez is just going to have to keep following the leads and find out. Well, after the birth of his legendary catchphrase anyway.
Cortez, you ready?
Yeah, it's time to split.
Right, whatever.
Jumping forward to 1969, lol, Cortez once again drops in on another legend of the series, Harry Tipper.
Damn it!
Wow, man. Are you for real?
Stop that.
Dressed to the nines, this cool cat doesn't seem too freaked out over the spaceman that's just dropped in. This is totally fine, as you don't need to waste any time explaining this each time, or when Cortez meets someone new. It fits the tone and helps the player get into the action fast. Tipper is on the tail of Callus once again, because this time he's gonna kidnap Kitten Celeste. Tipper also drops the fact that Callus's new friend is searching for the key to eternal life.
Word is, Callus giving him a small army in exchange for, get this, eternal life.
Eternal life?
Yeah!
And man, I just have to say straight off that this partnership is probably the peak of all TimeSplitters. Tipper and Cortez just work so well together. There isn't many characters out there that can make Cortez play the straight man, but Tipper somehow does. The entire game could have been these two on a buddy cop adventure throughout time, and I'd be totally fine with that.
Hey, where you going, man?
Time to split.
Ouch! That's not cool, man.
after Cortez impresses Tipper with his stealth skills. Or not, depending on how the player wants to go with this. Stealth is an option, or they could go loud. That and steal a vehicle for a little Grand Theft Auto action, though this all culminates in the deactivation of an electric fence to meet back up with Harry Tipper, and it won't be long before this pair split up once again. They were barely together this time, to be fair, as it's time for a mandatory sniper section, because Tipper's going to refuse to take out any enemies himself. Now I get why he isn't doing this because it's a gameplay section, but it's a bit weird that Harry Tipper puts away his weapon and just lets the guards shoot him. Thankfully the aiming has been fully overhauled, and the aiming reticle doesn't wrestle the player to return back to the centre. Otherwise I bet this sequence would have been a nightmare for some. With the disguise in hand, Tipper gets the short end of the stick for sure.
It's just not my color at all. Man, the things I do to save the world. It's pretty breezy too.
Now in a female's uniform, for some reason Tipper starts prancing around, like he's role-playing or something. Never would have bet on him being a method actor, and I can't deny I found this quite amusing back in the day. And you know what, I still do now. So what was set up as a straight FPS level has now become an undercover operation. Just showing how far TimeSplitters has come since the early days. The first game was a glorified point-to-point shootout. 2 overhauled this and redefined the structure, with a bunch of elements to interact with along the mission. But now with Future Perfect, there are clear segments or sequences rather than just running and gunning. And I'm not against running and gunning, because I love myself some Doom and Wolfenstein, but it's great to just mix things up each level, as each level strives to do something new, even when the time period is still the same.
Attention, Harry Tipper has entered the base. He is disguised as a woman.
Now I'm no game designer because I'm shit at math and was never really good at science, but this to me really is a point of a sequel, to really refine what came before and improve on it, and there's got to be a real reason to make a sequel in the first place. Some of the people behind this game crafted one of the most legendary first person shooters out there with GoldenEye 007, so a decade later on, they know what they're doing.
Hey you! The ugly woman with a mustache? You better let me go right now!
Now we'll be lucky to get one sequel in this time span, sneaking around Kalos's base of operations. Some of the guards' conversations are, well, pretty interesting.
Goran and I finally did it last night. Really? What was it like? It was fascinating.
Really playing to their demographic at the time. Oh, and one of them alludes to the Brotherhood of Ultra Science, which will be quite relevant later.
So we argued, but he persuaded me that we should join. And we did last night. I certainly don't regret it. We are special now, and we're going to get more and more so.
Turning the power back online will be the next course of action. This is probably the best point to bring up Anya. She's vital to help through certain sections and really keeps the level going, with her frequent updates guiding Cortez from point to point. Acting like a moneypenny or a queue, she's essential to the overall experience.
This looks like the main generator. Get this working and you'll get power back.
She's also much more effective than yellow paint that we get in like every game now. I know some players probably need help to get from point to point, but we should really be able to turn that stuff off. There are so many accessibility sliders in games these days, so just add that one to it as well. Before getting the power back online, the player can also stumble across an amusing section.
Hey, gorgeous. Haven't seen you in Sector 1 before.
Yes, I have been transferred here from Sector 4.
Well, you must have really screwed up big to get sent down here with the rest of us deadbeats.
Because when Tipper gets his legs out, everyone pays attention. Past the blast door, there's a handy vehicle to speed things up, but for some reason Harry Tipper wants to go down the stairs. Getting down to level 3, we get another glimpse of the mystery time traveller.
And go! Oh, for goodness sake! Whoa! Over there! Get him!
Before it's time to hitch a ride on the Kalos Express.
Damn it!
Thanks. No problem, man. Let's go.
After Cortez struggles to get aboard the train, Tipper makes a callback to the ethics of Dr. Jones, when it comes to trying to get a free ride anyway.
No ticket.
No ticket.
With that out of the way, it's time to talk about train levels, because you really can't beat them when they're done right. They are so simple in concept, but the fact these levels are so restrictive really shakes things up, especially as the prior levels were so wide open. Fighting through each train car, there's always something new to encounter, as this train isn't a copy and paste job. It's miles ahead of what GoldenEye could do back in the day.
You there!
Some of the narrow train cars cause the action to be real snappy, so much more that you might miss the henchwoman trying to release her load. destructible crates get in the player's way as they're being pursued by a helicopter, and by today's standards, this is nothing special. But back in the PS2 era, I still remember this being a big thing. In fact, whenever an environment could be destroyed or manipulated, this made that game feel so much more ahead of any others at the time. Sure, we've been able to destroy windows for a while now, but destroying crates or something like that, it was still kind of new. Well, for the consoles anyway. A bit like the pseudo water tech in TimeSplitters 2. A few cars down, future Cortez is back. Defending him is the only way to get rid of that bastard in the sky. And if you ever get a closer look at the pilot, oh, that's some nightmare fuel right there. His face is something else. Playing these sections from both perspectives hardly gets old either, with the objectives usually being varied enough, and like I mentioned earlier, just plays into a key part of the premise, making this feel like a real time travel story. If you have a game where time travel is a thing, fuck it, get wild with it. I always love how impressed Cortez is with himself. His character is just so endearing at times.
Cortez, the train.
Oh yeah. I know what I'm doing.
Dual wielding machine guns should do the trick for the next few cars, as they're filled with henchmen and women. They think they're ready for Harry Tipper, but they're getting Cortez instead.
Harry Tipper could be here any minute. I know he's our sworn enemy, but he's so gorgeous.
I know. Let's capture him and then he'll be at our mercy.
Passing by a slot machine that you'll need for a trophy, and a slideshow of what's to come, Kalos traps Cortez and Tipper, and unlike many evil villains, he's quite competent, if not a little creepy.
Well, if it isn't Harry Tipper, and you've brought a big, muscular friend.
Though with a flick of the wrist, thanks to the temporal uplink, the duo are saved. Again, the devs are calling back to something they knew of Kalos, but they always make good to tweak on their inspirations, like with the cat. I love that this thing is a remote control car essentially. It's so random but it just works. This level also introduces puzzles, which isn't something you'd expect to find in this game, but it's essential to fucking up Kalos' World War III plans, and making sure that never kicks off. Now the two just need to deal with the man himself, and this is a perfect spot to bring up a mistake I made in my last video. The Atom Smasher level in TimeSplitters 2 actually takes place 3 years after this, in 1972, with him simply being defeated in 1969. Lol. Claiming he'll have his revenge.
I will have my revenge!
Stopping the train in the nick of time, Tipper finally gets reunited with his girl, Kit and Celeste. As Tipper and Celeste head to a party, Annie has another lead for Cortez, so it's time for him to split and follow up on the Brotherhood of Ultra Science.
Just do the thing.
Jumping forward in time, Cortez now finds himself in the 90s, just before the world got a little bit more attitude to it. And unlike the prior game, for the most part, each time Cortez travels to a new time period, it's sequential, rather than dotting around through time. Which makes sense when he's following a trail, rather than a bunch of scattered TimeSplitters, who are notoriously absent from this game. And it's a shame because the Berserkers look bloody cool. The character design of Future Perfect really peaked with a Mansion of Madness. You don't get more mid-2000s post-Attitude Era than Joe Beth Casey.
Hey, you're no zombie!
Yeah.
Well, maybe in the multiplayer when you look at some of those characters, but when it comes to the main cast, she's right up there. Surprisingly, the writing doesn't let her down. She has real spunk to her and she's not a bimbo or anything like that, and comes across as well-rounded.
You're not from around here, are you?
No, and it's dangerous here. You should go home.
What? Are you kidding? There's no way I'm backing out now, so you can either help me or stay out of my way.
Fine, but I'm using the front door.
I mean, you've got to be a real character to walk around with the word slut on your chest. But again, Free Radical will play into the audience for sure. This mission though, is a zombie fan's wet dream. Taking everything that Free Radical has done before, the next two missions distill this down into what might be the best two first-person zombie levels out there. As the unlikely duo explore the mansion, I like that Joe Beth Casey isn't here to save the world or anything. She's just here for a couple of photos to get in a gang.
Oh, that's just great. Now we're trapped in here with the dead people.
But thanks to some conveniently placed lightning, these two won't be going back out the way they came. Before a scientist can spit out what he's done, a chandelier takes him out.
Ew, that is gross.
Then ghosts show up, but they can be taken out of a handy flamethrower. I don't get the logic in that, especially when we get to the next level. But whatever. Though this weapon's going to do more harm than good in the next room. So the baseball bat is the way forward here, which is a classic weapon against the undead. Anya makes sure to remind Cortez to go for the head, but thankfully, these aren't TimeSplitters 1 zombies, so smacking them anywhere will eventually do the trick. You've also got to love the one-liners and witty remarks that Anya comes out with.
Don't let them eat my brain!
Do you think anyone would notice?
I do like that her and Cortez are always getting along and having a laugh, even if the fate of the world is at stake. With just the first few rooms, the pace of TimeSplitters Future Perfect has totally changed. Going from a high-octane chase on a speeding train to skulking around a haunted mansion with zombies lurking about. This is TimeSplitters at its best. At this point I'm sure people are sick of me flating this game, but I'm just going to keep doing it anyway. As Future Perfect has some great game design, I'd argue the story itself peaks around here as well, as later on things get a bit more muted and a lot serious. We also get another callback to popular horror movies of the time.
Ghosts and zombies? What is going on here?
And by that I mean the haunted ghost girl Edwina, as The Ring and The Grudge were all the rage back in the day. All this to force Cortez outside to fight some off-brand tremors.
I'm gonna make a run for it.
Or graboids as they're actually called. Saving the scientists in the tree will help pass some time as the flames behind disappear. This is pretty much all we get of Edwina as well, as their plot was largely cut, and probably for good measure. Cut dialogue also reveals that this level featured Edwina a lot more, as she would speak to Cortez and seemingly be on his side. Apparently this was going to be a fetch quest or something like that, but none of this made the cut. So she just becomes a creepy mini-boss and that's it. And now it's time to upgrade from the bat to the weapon of choice for taking out zombies, the shotgun. The bigger brother to the one we've seen in the past 2 games. With only holding 2 shells at once, this makes zombies a real threat, especially as now each weapon takes longer to reload. Thanks to the devs now animating each weapon to reload separately, rather than just popping down off the screen and coming back up. The shotgun will be essential to survive the very Resident Evil looking dining hall, as zombies fall from above. And there are so many different zombies in this level, from the normal looking people to the butler and maid. There's just enough to make the player forget they're shooting the same models over and over again. And look, I'm not complaining because you can't expect devs to make like 100 different zombie models. What's on offer here does the job. They also animate a hell of a lot better than they've done in prior games, as they stumble towards Cortez's shotgun. These are all just a warm up though, as the freaky deer head on the wall has a body attached.
My God, what is that? Oh, gross! Kill it!
The moose is truly moose. Nothing in this fight is revolutionary, it's just a fun couple of minutes. Exiting the room though, this is where the tone changes quite a bit, and this level gets really spooky at some points. There's a terrified scientist sitting there, running through events that took place, and they sound pretty terrifying.
They're dead. They're all dead. I couldn't do anything. I had to leave them. I had to. I could still hear them screaming.
With creepy music playing alongside this, moments like this can really get under your skin, especially if you listen to what he's saying. Each time you find one of these guys, I just wonder if Free Radical could have pulled off a fully fledged horror game. In the upper levels there's a grim reference to The Shining, but also the zombies shoot back now. That and some will even start running at the player, to really change the pace. One of these between a bunch of walking zombies and some that shoot can really fuck up your day. In such a confined space, this becomes quite deadly. Oh, and the Beatles from The Mummy are here for some reason. Because of course they are.
Oh great, now what?
No! No, get away! Help me!
This is also the level's excuse to separate the player from the AR companion, because in the attic, Edwina is back, but this time she's spewing flames right at Cortez, whilst he's got to deal with a bunch of the undead. After this, we learn of a secret lab down below the mansion, Resident Evil style, all thanks to a scientist who also mentions the leader's still about.
We did research, wanted to live forever. Seems a bad joke now.
Though first, Princess is going to be in Cortez's way. This towering hunk of meat puts the deer hunters to shame. Just look at this homunculus, it's got a massive attack area, and it breathes fire just for good measure.
I heard a lot of crashing and banging and gunfire, but I thought I'd like to stay in here.
The carrion carcasses are peak enemy design right here. Just look at these demonic undead cow things, they're certainly done laughing. This is such a creative idea and they're really just a throwaway enemy. In one small room, you gotta love how they still moo as well. Oh, and there's a zombified chef, because this level didn't already have enough character models in it. Putting them all down for good, this will unlock the door to the hatch below. After exploring the mansion, it's time to go underground, which is something that's becoming a bit of a pattern. By that I mean, each level isn't always in a new time period, as the devs over at Free Radical made the most of the settings they had, so every time period gets a little bit more fleshed out, and the companions get more time to shine as well, rather than being ditched after just one mission.
I just gotta get a picture of this. Say cheese. Ha! Dumb zombies!
I don't think her brains are really gonna quench their appetite.
Though saying that, we only get one mission with Captain Ash, which is a real shame. The opening cutscene of What Lies Below though, is something that players keep clipping out to this day. It's pure TimeSplitters, saying a lot with not much at all.
You go first.
Getting into the level, JoBeth immediately walks off. Because of course she does.
No comments about the size of my butt, okay?
Because after all, she's here for some pictures, not to save the world. After turning a few corners and falling through the floor, Cortez finds her again, but way too quickly. Say hello to Joe Bath Creepy.
What is that?
Which is an excellent name for a demonic copycat character. And these freaks are changelings, much like the ones we saw in Notre Dame in TimeSplitters 2. If you let them get too close, they'll shake your money maker for sure. Thankfully, the revolver makes short work of them. And if the player's feeling merciful, they can end the 2 zombies hanging above. A little detail I've always appreciated. These aren't just static NPCs. They are in fact still alive. Or undead, or programmed to be undead, or they react like they're still alive, /undead / programmed to. So if you shoot them, they're going to make a noise, and you can blow their heads off to put them out of their misery. Turning the corner, it seems like the real JoBeth has got herself caught in a trap, but who and why are they setting these up? I guess it doesn't matter now as it's time to protect JoBeth before she gets eaten, as she dangles there like a piñata for the undead.
If I knew this would happen, I would have worn pants.
After this, we trade the mines for some secret underground labs. You know, the real good stuff. There's some classic vignettes down here too, with a bunch of scientists meeting their end, in some real gruesome ways.
Oh God, help me! Oh God!
Oh, yuck! Sucks to be him.
And of course, you can never save the poor buggers in time. Also the fact that some of these will then come back as zombies to attack you. Chef's kiss, that's just brilliant stuff. And yes, I'll keep saying this, because for me, this was real mind-blowing. Even if I do see now this was a canned animation and a scripted event, this NPC would always become a zombie, and the skin just switches when you turn the corner. But just let me have this magic moment, okay?
Maybe we can see what's been going on.
After putting an end to an all-you-can-eat feast, the computer in the corner will become essential to move forward, and really is a step back in time, back when people had a dedicated corner for the family PC. Simpler times. Using this desktop, within a PlayStation 2 emulated game, inside a PS5, this pseudo-inception was quite impressive at the time. Well, to console scrubs like myself anyway. I always remember being blown away that the devs got this computer running in an actual game. How innocent my mind was back then. Clicking through the windows and shortcuts, there's a bunch of Easter eggs, by the devs for more curious players, like that one message about brains, or that one zombie just sitting in front of the camera for some reason. There's also an audio log which is way ahead of its time.
This is A. Leonard's maintenance log for week 72. All the essential systems seem to be functioning fine. Secondary output is back to between...
These are only just starting to make their way into video games in a major way, either as tools to hide information, or paint the picture in the player's mind of what happened before. By the time of the 7th generation, these would be all over games, with only a few handling them well. Most just felt unnecessary and rambling, just to make up a word count, almost like me going on about audio logs for some reason.
Anyway, I put all the electrical tools and the body armor back in the locker.
Some people also say this is a reference to Doom 3, and how scientists would just drop vital information without a care in the world, which is a fun jab at Carmack and crew.
It's probably not wise to leave that kind of information in my log anyway. God knows who's listening in. Anyway, 400. That's it. 400 or something.
With a lack of TimeSplitters in our TimeSplitters game, the zombies have taken up their mantle by firing electric at the player.
Electric zombies? That is like so unfair.
That's shocking. Sorry.
Again, something that just doesn't last long, but it seems like every turn of the corner, this level and the one prior, are trying to throw something new at the player, keeping them on their toes and engaged. Also, if you were my age at the time, these were kind of scary. In the next room, the harpoon gun will be introduced. This is basically the crossbow from the last game, but refined. You shoot the harpoons, kill the bad guys, and then reclaim the harpoons. It's simple enough. And just looking at the gun, it's a real robust piece of kit, rather than it just looking like a few bits of wood and string in TimeSplitters 2. It's also essential to hold zombies off until JoBeth hacks the door open. It's a real bullet and shell saver. Zombies will also tank a bunch of harpoons if they're not shot in the head, which looks real gnarly sometimes. And because the level is so damn dense, through the next couple of doors, there'll be a zombie locked in a testing chamber. Accessing the computer terminal, there'll be a bunch of text logs and stuff like that about the experiments. But keep clicking around a few more times, and Cortez will be able to get some real good pictures for JoBeth Casey. As there's the option to do, well, whatever you want to the zombie. There's so much to play with here, and it's quite strange that this wasn't tied to a trophy. In the next room there's the same chamber again, but this time there's a scientist inside, and he doesn't feel guilty at all about what he's done.
I'm not coming out till they're all dead. I helped make them. I'm not gonna be killed by them.
So if you want, you can go and make him pay. Personally, I tried to go for the DK mode, but you just can't get the head that big.
Princess! I got some more food!
In the next area, for some reason there's a blatant Ozzy Osbourne ripoff. Lenny Elburn is a scientist who's just lost it, and he really is just so random. But at least now you know who's been setting the traps, and the name of the giant creature that Cortez fought earlier, even though I did spoil it. Ozzy was far from his peak by the time this game came out, but his reality TV show The Osbournes was in its final season, so that's kind of relevant.
Hey! Get away from my burrito, little bastard.
Just when it looks like this level might be over, Cortez and Joe Beth corner young Crow.
I don't know who you are, but you're not getting any further.
We'll see about that.
Yes. Yes, we will.
But he pulls out a villain classic, the trapdoor, and of course, Cortez falls down. Next up is a minecart shooting gallery with head sprouters and zombies all about. And if you just take a look at the head sprouters, they could almost be a primitive version of the TimeSplitters. And then with the next few levels, it feels like the devs are leaving breadcrumbs for the player to find. Just one of the many breadcrumbs left throughout the game. I like how Anya has to say the minecart broke Cortez's fall, because sure, the floor would have been worse.
Your fall.
I mean, there's no padding in that minecart. At the end of this sequence, Cortez comes across his future self once again, and he wastes no time explaining what's up this time.
Get down! What? Whoa! What the hell was that? Ghosts? Ghosts? But how did you see them? Ghost goggles. Ghost gun.
Out of all the future past crossovers, no, not the X-Men, this is the most blah of them all. Like, it's cool I guess, but it's the same stretch of mine twice. All you do is switch up the weapons and use a ghost gun for about 10 minutes. And the ghosts themselves are pretty shit if I'm gonna be honest. They're just 2D sprites that come wiggling their arms at you and that's it. I appreciate the variety and all that, but it just doesn't do it for me. Dropping down another hole, getting real deep underground at this point. I'm shocked Cortez hasn't come across a Balrog or the Locust. But no, it's time for one last battle against Princess, as the creature is sat in a pit of lava of all things. Because video games, I guess. More's on the line this time as Joe Beth Casey is hung above the creature, so that and some annoying flying bastards make this fight a little bit more challenging. But thankfully there's a big old gas can in Princess's mouth, so of course you just shoot that and the whole thing will be over pretty quickly.
Hurry before it eats her!
Oh, and if playing split screen multiplayer, Joe Beth ain't gonna be up there. Instead, it'll be Lenny Elburn. Hooking back up with Joe Beth, the mystery man is gone, but not without leaving a parting gift. Operating the door would trigger a self-destruct sequence.
Jacob Crow? So at last our mystery man has a name. I'll run a search on the database. This whole place is gonna blow! You've got to get to the elevator in the labs.
Which just plays into classic secret underground labs. I mean, you don't want anyone to find your secret underground lab when you're done with it, so blow it up when you're gone. Also, Crow, the mystery man, leaves Cortez a neat little reference to Jurassic Park.
Please! God damn it! Hate this hacker crap!
And whilst I'm on this point, can we all just accept that Seinfeld is canon to Jurassic Park?
Why is that?
Because Jurassic Park is a perfect end for Newman. Anyway, escaping the labs, the game throws everything at the player, bar some ghosts, whilst Anya drops a bunch of facts in the player's ear.
According to the records, there is a weapons company called Eugenics, which was founded by Jacob Crow. Apparently the company was suspected of illegal research and was closed down by the government in 2052.
Weird time to drop a lore dump, as I'm sure a bunch of players missed this, just trying to survive. But to sum it up, Jacob Crow hasn't been playing by the rules, as he's been desperately searching for the key to eternal life. Outside, young Crow gets filled in by old man Crow.
Grandpa? No, fool! It's me! Grandpa! No! I'm you! You're me? Yes! From the future!
This doesn't create any paradox like Anya warns, but it does explain why the scientists know so much. This whole cutscene goes from quite serious to quite funny after a while, which honestly is Free Radical's MO at this point.
Crow! Hey, you again?
What?
There's another lore dump and the time crystals are brought up, before it's time for Crow to split, and he gets out of there. And with that, it's also time for Cortez to split too, as he leaves Joe Beth Casey to do her thing.
You got a location for that eugenics company?
Way ahead of you, Cortez. Coordinates locked in. Ready when you are.
These past two levels really cement my love for this series. As you can see, they take up a significant part of this video. Cortez and Joe Beth just work so well together. There's a ton of intrigue as we go from creepy mansion to underground facility. Then we learn who the real bad guy is. These levels are so dense, and you could really make a video about these levels alone. This was Free Radical at the top of their game.
It's time to I gotta go.
But... oh well. Too old for me anyway.
Appearing at the top of the eugenics company building in the year 2252, Cortez spots someone else who's breaking into the headquarters. From here it's the case of harnessing the player's stealth abilities as they try and get down below. It isn't necessary, but sneaking around makes this whole level a lot easier.
Looks like she knows the layout. I'm gonna follow her in.
Okay, I'll try and find out who she is. Be careful, Cortez.
Don't worry about me.
Thankfully, the new acquired mag charger can take out electrical systems and cameras without much hassle.
Change mode on your mag charger, and you can see electrical systems, like cameras.
Aiming the thing, it feels like you're stepping into the shoes of the Predator. Zapping a few control panels, Cortez will now be able to manipulate the security system, so you can go loud, or get the security bots to lend a hand, or just shut them all down entirely. Stealthing through this skyscraper, you can expect the usual fare of guards, laser traps, and cameras. Again, Cortez can go guns blazing, but that's just not my style.
Possible intruder detected on floor 128. Squad 17 investigate. Affirmative, 17 en route.
Though once you come across some time grenades, it's hard to resist using them.
Time grenades? This is extremely dangerous technology. These were banned in the Peckham Convention of 2055. Just the sort of thing you'd expect Crow to have lying around.
Accessing another terminal, Cortez and Anya can get a look at this mystery woman, and it's clear she can hold her own.
She's good.
Though I'm sure she appreciates the extra help via a gun turret, even though this mission is a lot more bog standard than the last couple. It's a fine stealth FPS level, with drinks machines and cleaning robots being a nice touch. And I swear this is a trope that comes up more often than not, because the same technique of using a cleaning robot to get into somewhere was used in Alien Isolation.
I am the Sweet Sap DPT cleaning robot. I am ideal for both office and domestic use. No job is too small.
And whilst I brought that up, do a lad a favour and go watch that video. It deserves so many more views. The handyman then drops a truth bomb as he's trying to shut down the alarm.
This building's computer has more glitches than the CEO's had secretaries. I don't understand that either. How is it possible to hire so many useless secretaries? Perhaps if he tried someone a bit more mature, with greater experience, their performance would be more satisfactory.
He's got a point.
And I don't know if it's an inside dig or not, as Free Radical used to hire a lot of people straight out of university, rather than seasoned vets. I don't know, just a thought. Dealing with guys that rappel through the windows, the time grenades are a must here. Then stepping into the toilets, it's a reminder that mirrors used to be a thing in video games, and by that I mean reflections in mirrors, as now it feels like every mirror is smudged or broken or something like that. Turning the corner, it's time for Cortez to find his partner for the next two levels.
Hold it right there.
Damn it!
I know you've been following me. What are you after?
I'm looking for Crow.
Looks like we're here on similar business.
Maybe we could help each other out.
You think you can keep up?
I've already saved your hide once.
Just don't get in my way.
Gaining access to Crow's office, Amy Chen drops more truth bombs while she tries to hack her way through his defenses.
People who use their own names for their password deserve to be hacked.
Whilst Cortez defends her, the SBP 500 is a fine weapon for this as well, without having a really high firing rate, and it's pretty quick to reload. Though I've never been a fan of the dispersion gun, it's a futuristic style shotgun weapon which always feels a bit flat. Once Amy finally gets into Crow's office, it seems like there's yet again another secret underground lab.
Hidden right under this building. So, the rumors of illegal research and abductions must be true. The evidence will be down in those labs.
I swear Crow has these things all over the world, but it's a trope I'm never going to get sick of. Unlike the other companions, it's also nice to see that Amy isn't that trusting of Cortez just yet.
This should take us to Crow's secret lab.
I'm ready.
I pressed it already.
Yeah, right.
However, getting to the lift, these two finally get to have a chat, as the game resets the pace, going into the next level.
So, been with the agency long?
Yeah. 3 years in May.
Yeah! Time to split!
I'll get the next one.
As the level opens, Cortez and crew get a look into what Crow is all about, when he's not being supervised.
Our research is unfettered by ignorant moral restrictions. The goal is all that matters.
Unfettered by moral restrictions? Sounds like a clear admission of illegal research techniques to me.
The deeper the player gets into the labs, the more fascistic he sounds.
Anyone expressing doubts about our project should be reported to your superior immediately. Be vigilant at all times.
Sneaking into the showers, some scientists are having a good old chat.
Yesterday, I injected this guy, and his eyes glowed yellow and all the lights went out. When they came back on, he was dead.
Weird. You sure all this stuff is safe? I heard rumors about things happening in other labs.
Not expressing doubts about the project, are we?
No, of course not. My loyalty to the Brotherhood is absolute.
Now with the ID card in hand, it'll be time for Cortez to change his outfit once again, whilst Crow continues to blabber on in the background.
Knowledge is power, and we are learning more and more.
Though Amy isn't as keen to change her outfit like Tipper was, so she follows behind, whilst reminding Cortez who he's undercover as.
Remember, your name is Gordon. Now lead on, Doctor.
Are we sure this isn't Black Mesa? Jumping on another terminal, the rail bot can be used to take out the guards. But I can't help get distracted by the monitor. Like, what's up with that aspect ratio? Why is it in 4:3? That's so 20th century. Getting through security, it becomes clear why this place was locked down. Because it's been a few minutes, Amy decides to keep watch of the door, whilst Cortez looks for a way to pass through, as he's going to need to get sterilized.
I'm not sure if we're allowing anyone into the sterile area at the moment.
Of course, this isn't so simple, as the player's going to have to find Dr. Fergal, though she won't be much help either.
I'm afraid we're not allowing anyone past this point at the moment. A small situation has developed, but it should be under control soon. Perhaps you'd like to discuss techniques for negating gangrenous and attenuating nephrotic degradation while we wait.
Just run, Cortez. Just run.
And this doesn't matter much, as Amy comes rushing in, with a bunch of friends in tow.
Don't shoot me! I'm too clever to die.
Thankfully, the sterilization isn't as intrusive as it was in Dr. No. That scene just went on forever.
Reading 38.
But now Amy's got a matching outfit. Getting to the next room, sticking around and listening to the employees talk is always one of my favourite parts of this game. In any level in Future Perfect, whenever you get a chance to eavesdrop, you should. The dialogue's quirky, and it's always world building.
Hey, didn't you guys hear that? All the experiments are cancelled. I'm out of here in 5 minutes.
I can't wait to get out of here and have a shower. I got plasma all over my arms earlier on. I should be issued a biosuit.
Amy has this all covered, with some unconventional means.
I'm sorry, sweetheart, we can't let you through. And believe me, you don't want to go...
Believe me, it would have been less painful if you hadn't called me sweetheart.
Blasted by more security forces, another scientist is going to be waiting, but this time they've got something for Cortez.
Oh, thank God! You've got to help! Mutants have broken out! They're overrunning the whole facility! I've got this serum. It should kill them if delivered via a dart gun, but I'm no soldier.
Now the injector becomes more deadly than ever. Because, well, just take a look at this. This serum saves on bullets because those mutants really tank some shots. Also, just looking at them and seeing how they behave, you start to see more clues to the origins of the TimeSplitters, as the mutants disappear partially and send out electric shockwaves. As chaos ensues, the security guards are pretty outmatched.
Hey, it's him!
And quoting from Aliens isn't going to help them either.
You like that, huh? You want some more? Oh, you want some too, huh? Yeah, come on!
Blasting through this level, Free Radical has done a fine job to make it feel really chaotic. Like everything's really going to shit. And then because we can never have enough references, here's another quote from Aliens.
Game over, man. Game over!
Makes me almost feel bad for these guys. They've got great taste. Playing back through this level for the retrospective, I forgot how much fun it was wading through the labs. I don't know, there's always something special about enemies fighting each other in a level. Sometimes a triple threat match is just what a level needs, especially when a lot of players are expecting another stealth affair. You can't even argue this is anywhere near the same as the last secret lab either. Back in that level everyone was pretty much dead, but here in 2052, we see it all go down. Getting around the lockdown means you have to kill all the mutants, even those ones locked to the bed, and well, the crane comes in handy here.
Cortez, no, that's horrible.
After dealing with them, it's time to hook back up with future Cortez once again.
Grab that terminal and hack the access code. I'll deal with the railguns.
Hacking the terminal is the aim for this one, whilst future Cortez holds off the enemies. And for some reason,
Password's banana.
not that these puzzles are tough or anything, but I bet they stump some players who just want to shoot some more mutants. Just when it seems like there isn't enough pair of hands to go around,
Each terminal must be simultaneously decrypted in order to proceed.
2 more Cortezes drop in, pushing the timeline to its limits.
Keep it going. I'll take the other terminal.
Now through the wormhole, it's this Cortez's turn to cover the other ones. And for something that repeats 4 times, I don't hate it. Though again, this just has me wondering what the devs could have done with a TimeSplitters 4. You can really get wild with a time travel premise. Just look at Mortal Kombat 11. When you play as Shang Tsung, you can take over the universe. That's good shit.
It has begun.
Having fun?
What a cool bunch of guys.
You did it! Great job. I can't believe there wasn't a simpler way, though.
Now back with Amy, it's time to finally go face to face with Jacob Crow. If it were only that simple though. Destroying his security bots will drop his shields and leave the old gate open for interrogation. Though it turns out Cortez might have a bigger part to play here, as he kind of lays out the plan for Crow.
Don't play dumb with me, Crow. I know everything. I know you used the time device to travel back to 1994 and tell your younger self to carry on your twisted genetic experiments using the power of the time crystals.
Really?
Really?
Well, yeah.
In all his rage, somehow Cortez yelling echoes all the way back 83 years.
Damn it!
Spaceman!
Nice to see Tipper and Kitten Celeste debriefing after the mission. Thanks to a destroyed bot, Cortez and Anya work out their next destination.
I think I can take it from here.
Right.
All set, Cortez. But be careful. There's a war going on.
I'm ready.
Landing in the year of 2243, Cortez finds himself in the Machine Wars, less than 200 years from his own time now, where the TimeSplitters brings humanity to its knees. So whilst he's here, Cortez is going to need some backup.
Yeah, who's a daddy?
After hacking R110, this robot will become Cortez's buddy until the very end. Light spoilers, but I'm pretty sure if you're watching this, you've played the game already. And if not, what are you doing? Hacking the battle droid impresses the resistance, so they offer Cortez to tag along.
Which unit are you with? Oh, never mind. We can talk later. This sector is hot. We gotta keep moving.
The human resistance. They might know where the Ultranet base is.
They also have a battle tank, which makes getting to Ultranet a lot easier. Machine Wars is true to its name, with this level being all about destroying bots as Cortez gets to his objective. There are light and heavy bots to mix up the action, with the larger lads being tanky as hell. There's also the odd human enemy that's defected to the dark side, just to show how low some can get. I really prefer the sci-fi weapons in Future Perfect compared to the 2 prior. They just feel so much better to shoot, and have a real kick to them. Though honestly, I could almost forget we're playing a TimeSplitters game at this point. What with the muted dark setting? I know Notre Dame was dark, but it still had some character to it. Even though the players fought zombies, mutants and pseudo-Nazis by now, these 2 levels are far more mature, feeling more like a precursor to Haze, rather than a continuation of this goofy romp. The tank sequence also detaches from what makes TimeSplitters feel unique, but mandatory vehicle sections were in a lot of games back in the PS2 and Xbox era. Though you've got to give it to Halo, they always nailed theirs. This is also where Future Cortez comes into play.
Need a lift? Yeah, thanks for stopping. You would have done the same for me. Already did.
But you can forget he's even there, as he just jumps into the tank. But I guess he is barking orders and words of encouragement, so there's that. Then he goes and steals our robot buddy. And as if the rise of the machine's future wasn't already a dead giveaway, some of our 110's lines sound rather like a certain T101.
The implantation procedure is completely painless.
Why didn't you mention this before?
You didn't ask.
Have fun.
Hooking back up with Angel Ford and Genghis Kant.
Hey, it's you again. I knew you'd find your way here. Come on.
It'd be time to pick up a plasma auto rifle and get one of those implants. This is probably what Free Radicals showed EA at the end of the day. I reckon this is what EA wanted out of this game all the way through. You can't fault it though. It's a solid console FPS level, and on higher difficulties it can be quite challenging. Going into the implant chamber, this leaves Cortez with next to no health.
Implantation procedure in progress.
Then coming out the other side, you can hear Genghis all relieved.
Hey, what do you know? He lived!
breaking his serious demeanour just for a moment. This is what I mean by the tone of TimeSplitters. There's always some room for a little levity. No one else was really doing this at the time, and I can't think of many devs or writers that have done this since. Then after getting your hands on a sci-fi sniper, it'll be time to scrap some more bots. Then it's time for the tank section once again, but this time as a turret. I guess it mixes things up just enough. As the two part ways, it's time to get a minigun and mow down a bunch of bots. And come on, who doesn't love shooting a minigun from time to time? Weirdly, as this level comes to a close, someone decided to play 3D Donkey Kong. And just saying that, I'm shocked this wasn't a challenge, as nothing really escapes challenge mode or arcade league. Jumping into a vehicle, it's hilarious that R110 even bothers giving directions.
After 50 meters, turn right. Surrender or be destroyed.
What with the path ahead being pretty straightforward, you just go from A to B, and B stands for big ass bot. Using the Goliath bot to shoot down everything in the sky, this will grant access to the Ultranet base.
There it is, the workers' entrance.
Something to crow about starts with a little lift ride, which will torture me later, but for now, it's not taking the sights. Then Cortez stands back as R110 hacks the door, in only a way that could work in TimeSplitters.
No, don't do that! You bad robot! You will...
Welcome, friends! You almost feel bad for the door as it submits, and maybe I have a warped sense of humour, but for some reason this always cracks me up. As more robots teleport in, Med Unit 6 can be heard off to the side, worrying himself into early decommission.
We're feeding in. They're coming for me. Oh, this is not going to keep my peace. Oh, help!
The bot also sounds like a love child of C-3PO and R2-D2, which I'm sure wasn't an accident. This is now classic TimeSplitters, as enemies just beam in without warning, a lot like that first game. Well, apart from the teleporting sound, which is a dead giveaway. Poor Med Unit 6 normally gets caught in the crossfire here as well.
And download all relevant information on this facility.
As R110 hacks into another computer, but this time he uncovers something big, as Anya comes up with a plan to stop the war to come.
Cortez, look at this data. The base is vast. It has hangars, weapons research, and what's this? Crow has built hundreds of thousands of incubation pods. He's speed growing an entire army. But wait, it's not a human army. Or robot, it's... oh no, they're TimeSplitters.
Hacking doesn't come without a few dangers though, as now R110 has caught a virus, now sounding like one of those AI chatbots let loose.
Activating countermeasures. Virus contained. I feel... let's saddle up and kick some butt.
R110 is totally a new character now, as the electric tool comes into play. It should be noted that this is one of the only weapons that survived being redesigned from TimeSplitters 2. Oh, and now it also takes out bots' shields, so that's handy.
Hiding behind shields, eh? Cowards! Eat my laser! Eat it!
Though for some reason the rolling robots don't have shields. Was that too on the nose?
I want the Roidigers up here at once!
Again, listening to another door submit never gets old.
What? No! How dare you! Violation! Stop! Welcome, friends!
And from here R110 really does become the star of the level, which is welcomed after a few dry levels, let's be fair. Honestly, I lose my train of thought of what Anya wants us to shoot next, so like a good space marine, I just shoot everything. Getting a grenade in the hole will make sure the TimeSplitters army is never even born. Pretty grim, but it's for the best. And also, does this count as a spawn kill? Either way it triggers the Goliath SD9, but it's nothing if you sci-fi grenades can't handle. Then turning a giant cannon against the boss would open up a handy doorway, and at this point it feels like there's endless robots for Cortez to mow down. It's not the most unique of levels, but it's certainly earned after the build up, and does complement some of the smaller and denser ones. This level is all about scale, or the illusion of it as Cortez stumbles into the birthing chamber.
My god, look at this! There are hundreds of these chambers!
But like the last game, the Electrotor will take care of the glowy power source. Approaching Crow's lair, Anya has some words the player can live by.
Crow's built himself a palace. Make sure it becomes his tomb.
But first, you've got to reactivate a bridge. It's simple, but a clever way to use the Electrotor, I guess. You can't knock the creativity here. Inside the palace, things look quite ornate for the time period anyway, and of course what's going on above. So best thing is to blast through a bunch of glorified butlers and confront Crow. In the main chamber, this isn't what Cortez was expecting.
My god, what is that?
As this homunculus looking thing is equal part tank and equal part biomatter. Doing as Anya says will do the trick though. Thankfully we always have her in our ear.
I hacked into the teleportation crate. Beats walking.
So now what's left is to get out of here, when it's not over yet.
Let's get out of here, Robo.
Crow really has gone and done a number on himself. The man or homunculus thing is hard to look at now, and shown his true colours, he admits he's been doing this all for himself. When he does the villain thing and spills the beans on his plot.
Kenos! Kenos, what a fool! I just used him to acquire enough manpower to mine that island.
The island?
But at least they didn't intentionally give it away. Cortez and Anya just worked this one out. So with that, it's time to go back in time.
Ready when you are.
Let's do it!
I'm going to put a stop to your meddling once and for all.
Going back to where it all started, kind of, Cortez and R110 find themselves back on the island. Though sadly this place is Captain Ashless now, as him and Jungle Queen are probably debriefing as well. Actually, come to think of it, as she lost her battle against Kitten Celeste over Harry Tipper, was Captain Ash just sloppy seconds?
Cortez.
Huh? Yeah?
I know that Crow said he was mining the island, but we searched this place and didn't find any crystals.
Wondering how they missed the crystal mining operation, R110 points out the obvious submarine in the room.
But where?
Cortez might have destroyed the TimeSplitters army, but he still needs to destroy the crystals. But if not, Crow's gonna just do this again.
Of course! The crystals aren't on the island, they're under it! Come on, Tin Man.
Now docking in the underwater base, this place gives me Rapture vibes. This base looks like it could be a maintenance part of that city, with similar pipes, tone, and well, it's leaking everywhere. It's actually quite a smart choice to bring the player back to a more quaint setting, jumping back in time after all the enemies and tech ramped up. It's also just amusing to hear R110 rip everything to pieces.
Be my primitive projectile, EX!
Because everything's so primitive to him, some of his one-liners are masterful, and I can't help but think this base might be massive, but I bet R110 has more computing power than it all put together, even if he does get a little too carried away hunting humans.
Careful, there could be a human hiding that pipe.
And falls down a pipe, Super Mario style.
Nothing here.
There isn't much in terms of variety when it comes to the enemies here, bar the divers with their harpoon guns, who also walk super slow, giving off the impression they're actually in a diving suit, which like the zombie animations, is a nice touch. There's also steam engine robots to mix things up in the storage room, which until this room, the level's been comprised of tight dimly lit tunnels. Fortunately after this, the level opens up into a wider area. That really shouldn't be. Turns out there's whole streets down here, with homes and everything. This is not only a godsend to shake up the look of the level, but it shakes up the encounters for some long range gunplay. Any excuse to break out the sniper is a good one in my books. Once R110 drops back in, it'll be a case of pulling a few levers to get deeper underground.
A lift shaft. Maybe it leads down to the mining site.
On the ride down, there'll be this level's drunk.
I miss me girl.
And R110 admires the penetration, because of course.
For a human machine, this has an impressive penetration.
Once at the bottom, they come across a legion of time assassins, getting ready to take Cortez out in the future. But even though he's in the future, this is actually past Cortez. Thankfully they have a handy reference above the portal, but sadly, R110 can't join along.
I think you better stay here.
Jumping through the portal, there'll be a familiar level waiting.
Yeah, that's what you think.
Now in the future past, this is basically the first level all over again, but from a different perspective, as the Cortez down there has no idea of the wormholes to come. This level doesn't really do anything revolutionary either, as it's really just a sniping escort mission, though saying that it's rather painless, and a handy way to reuse resources I guess. Though there's one aspect that doesn't make sense and kinda messes up the timelines.
Look Cortez, it's the TimeSplitter mothership! Man that gun and try to take it down!
Because this Cortez destroys the mothership before the bridge gets destroyed. These events happen in the opposite order in the first level. But then again, maybe this is just us playing around with the timelines.
Cortez, you seem to have forgotten that this bridge gets destroyed by a crashing fighter. Move it, soldier!
Going around the corner, it looks like the TimeSplitters are still a thing, and I just can't get over how little they were utilised in this game. This is the final installment of TimeSplitters, and there's barely any TimeSplitters in it. Crow's a decent villain for sure, but breaking out a few TimeSplitters here and there would be nice. Rounding off the level, we get to fight them one last time, but from a vantage point, so it's not really all that challenging. Killing enough will allow Cortez to enter the base safely, just like in the first level. Doing so, Cortez reflects on the entire adventure so far, and considers other options.
Just think, I could tell him about Crow and the time crystals, the island. I could stop this whole thing.
No, Cortez, we're too close.
I know.
Though after Anya talks some sense into him, it's time to go back to Scotland and finish this.
Okay, Anya, get me out of here.
Nice picture. Okay, no more distractions. Find the crystals.
Back in the past, President Cortez is ready to fix the timelines for good, and R110's been admiring the portrait this entire time. Getting back to the matter at hand, the two don't have far to go, as the time crystals and the machines using them are literally next door. So after taking care of some last goons, all Cortez needs to do is grab the crystals and destroy them, when it's never that easy. Splitter Crow is back for one final showdown, though thankfully this fight is a lot easier than the first. There's more cover and R110 draws a lot of the attention, shooting the weak spots, which have handy markers on them. This will be the end of the line for Jacob Crow. Seriously, that's it. I just can't get over how straightforward this fight is. Like, why didn't the devs throw in TimeSplitters for good measure? And fuck it, while I'm rewriting the ending, why didn't we have a bunch more characters come back? In hindsight, I don't think Free Radical thought this would be the last TimeSplitters game, so I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, but there's just so much potential for this ending, especially with this being a time travel game, and I'm going to use Avengers Endgame as a reference point here, because there's nothing like having a bunch of allies for one last showdown. It worked in Helm's Deep, and it worked in Witcher 3 also. I really feel that this was a missed opportunity. Instead, we just get Cortez and one extra Cortez, and of course R108.
Crow? But Crow's not here. We gotta stop meeting like this.
For me, this would have been a perfect cap to a game that I already consider a masterpiece. Maybe when AI has come and taken all of our jobs and locked us up in pods, I can ask it to recreate the ending for me. Just to have Harry Tipper and Captain Ash team up as they help Cortez fuck up a bunch of TimeSplitters. However, the ending we do get is Crow muttering before he finally goes offline, and I hope most of the people watching this know that reference. With that, Cortez makes the place go boom and returns to his own time.
Time to split! Right on. Get us out of here!
It's sweet the General gets so happy over his new robot.
And you brought me back a robot!
Rather than the mission being completed. Though as the base on that island in the past explodes, everything vanishes. This means we have to say goodbye to R108.
Ah, not the robot!
Look!
Turning to the massive window, the three observe as Green returns to what was a barren battlefield. And with that, we get a neat nod to Han and Leia as this trilogy closes.
Oh, Cortez. You're my hero.
I know. It's what I do.
And before I close this retrospective out, I still got to talk about Arcade League in Challenge Mode. It's third time lucky when it comes to the Challenge Mode in TimeSplitters Future Perfect, with them being necessary in the first game as there wasn't a story mode, and they were improved in TimeSplitters 2, shifting off the random multiplayer scenarios to Arcade League, which I'll get to, but probably not into a lot of detail this time, as they are just glorified multiplayer matches.
Killing spree! Lobotomy!
But in TimeSplitters Future Perfect, almost every challenge has something new to offer, or it's a fresh spin on what we had before. Very little does it feel like the game's repeating challenges like it has done prior. These challenges don't feel like they're wasting the player's time, and really get everything out of the last bit of code in this game. There are some returning challenges, but with a slight twist, and some totally new ones. They're actually a joy to get a high score in. So anyway, it's time to dive in. Behead the Undead is first up, which means things are back to how they should be. Braindead is a real throwback also, with it being set in the closed off section of the hotel, which resembles the mansion from the first game, but with a new coat of pixels. And it also won't have the player fighting the same box standard zombie. Nah, this time, they're fighting bloody monkeys. Zombified monkeys, but still, monkeys. This is a great little twist on a challenge that has been around since the start of the game, before those chimps were even in TimeSplitters. So all you can do is grab the double barrel shotgun and get blasting. Rare or well done is a butcher's nightmare, with it being set in the cramped kitchen of the mansion. Here all the player has is the injector gun, as an endless wave of cow carcasses come their way. You gotta keep moving in this one because they'll box you in seconds. And the only way to get out will be turning them into red mist. It can be deafening thanks to all those moves as well, but still the devs get extra points for the enemy design here, because just look and listen to these cow carcasses, they're brilliant. Boxing Clever sees the return of the zombies for one last go around, but this time in the eugenics lab. Here all the player has to defend themselves is the temporal uplink and a fuckload of boxes. Launching them at the undead will eventually take them down, but of course going for the head is key. These 3 challenges were horde mode before we knew it, and it's a shame Free Radical never got a crack at making a proper horde mode. Next up is the return of shooting cutouts that resemble the enemies from each game. And yes, these are 3 glorified shooting ranges, and some neat flavor text set in the scene. Heart Attack takes us to a parallel universe where Corporal Hart made it.
Locked, cocked, and ready to roll.
And Cortez didn't. Running through the first level, it'd be up to the player to take out the evil splitters, whilst avoiding Cortez. Come Hell or High Water sees the return of Viola. This one is a little different as it locks the player onto a gondola. I just hope she negotiated her fee, because they always charge tourists more. This one may take a few tries as well, just to nail down where the layout is, as some targets only appear for a few seconds. Balls of Steel rounds out this challenge set, with R107 making his return, this time with a sniper in hand. This is more of a bog standard shooting range really. Nothing super climactic, just a bunch of cardboard cutouts with some neat artwork on them. For the third set, Future Perfect has some new challenges, with the player now driving a cat.
Me and my pussy are going to have a lot of fun.
Turns out when he isn't planning world domination, Callus is racing his pussy around various time periods. It's amusing that the devs went this far to put racing challenges in their first person shooter, and they didn't even use the vehicles in the game, they used the cat instead. So they just show up in the main story for all of what, 20 minutes if that? There's mention of these classic racing challenges being a thing, but they were cut, and I'm all for it really, because racing a remote control cat is so much more this game's style. That and the sound effects of the mechanical key just get me. The little growl as the engine is fucking perfect. And then when the cat crashes, you hear that furball screech his head off. The cat out of the bag is a simple enough race, around the rooftops of the eugenics building. But like any racing game, you've got to pay attention if you want to get the top trophy. And there are some quite robust driving mechanics in this arcade shooter. I don't know if someone's doing this in their spare time, or did everyone come together and go, yes, we need to race that cat around the challenge mode.
3, 2, 1. Go!
Lap It Up is the most challenging of all 3 races, with it taking place on the VR map, which most players probably won't be familiar with. It took me a few times to learn the layout, putting my mum to shame as she was a massive Colin McRae rally fan at one point. Whilst I'd rather stick to Crash Team Racing, the best kart racer out there. You heard me. The cat's pajamas bring Strudel to Siberia. This must have been one of the real races cut from this game, as it's so open. And the player can even ignore the track sometimes, as all you need to do is go through the checkpoints and you're set. But of course avoid the snow, or that's going to slow pussy down. Now it wouldn't be a TimeSplitters game without challenges involving breaking shit, would it? So yeah, Avle Brick brings us back to where it all started, on the Chinese map, with only bricks to break windows and plates. I'll be happy to never do this ever again. Absolutely Potty is at least something different, as it features Captain Ash with a shotgun on the new Aztec map.
Ooh, time for fisticuffs. Splendid!
And really, is there any other way to do some proper archaeology? Getting a route down and choosing your shots is key here, making sure to smash as many pots as you can with one shot, whilst watching out for those monkeys holding a few as well.
3, 2, 1, go!
Don't Lose Your Bottle sees Harry Tipper cleaning up his disco after a big night of partying. Kitten Celestial's out, but she'll be back soon. So what best way to get rid of the evidence than shooting it? Putting out dual-wielded pistols, Harry Tipper's got to make sure not to shoot any henchmen or women. That are deduct points. And this at least challenges the player, rather than just being thrown a bunch of bricks at windows and plates. Oh, and the reward for this? Bricks. Oh great. Free Radical are back on their retro shit with the next 3 challenges, with TimeSplitters classic story missions. And if you watched my first video on TimeSplitters 1, you know how much of a drag some of them were. If not, well, the first game was nothing but grabbing a bag, then running back to the start of the mission, and if you were lucky, maybe you went to somewhere else on the map too. All culminating in some red circles, which looked like an asset that needed to be replaced. Queen of Hearts sees us return to a parallel universe once more, as Corporal Hart gets her last chance to shine. Her mission here, find the crystal and get to the portal. And the funny thing is, this one mission has more to it than all the missions in TimeSplitters 1. That EA money goes far. Sammy Hammy Namby Pamby, whatever that is another classic enemy gauntlet to grab a bag and get back to the portal, but this mission puts up way more of a fight, thanks to it being set in Vietnam with wider open areas and a lot less cover. I can't help but wonder if this was a mission cut from the game, but then it was scrapped, as you know it's a bit too serious for Cortez. If not, this mode is a fine way to extend Future Perfect, because at least it features TimeSplitters. Glimpse of Stocking is the final classic TimeSplitters story challenge, and it's a sequel to Hit Me Baby One More Time. It features the return of Mr. Underwood. No, not that one. He's misplaced his Victorian Gentleman's magazine, so now he's gonna have to fight through a bunch of pesky zombies to go and get it. This is some good old fashioned zombie fun, and it's a great way to cap off this mode. Going back to that old TimeSplitters formula isn't that bad, once it's been refined a bit. It's time for those bloody monkeys to get their shot to shine. In the penultimate challenge bracket, with the Electro Chimp Disco-matic, tasking Harry Tipper to keep the party going. Robo Chimps just don't have the stamina though, so Tipper's gonna have to use the Electro tool to keep the party going. You've got to be careful though, because these little fellas can explode. Give these Robocop looking chimps a bit too much juice, and they'll blow a gasket. Melons are back in business for the next challenge, as monkeys are once again carrying them around above their heads, just waiting for them to be blown away. Melon Heist is basically that one section from the third mission, but repurposed. Instead of Cortez saving Tipper, an elite henchman has to protect Callus's secrets at all cost, and by that he's got to shoot the melons and not the monkeys? I don't know why. Brass Monkey is another case of Free Radical just doing whatever the fuck they wanted. Like, come on, who sat at their desk and decided this game needed curling? Off the top of my head, I can't even think of a curling game. It's probably in one of those Olympics games or something like that. But clearly this is the best curling tech in any video game ever. Fuck all those games with their state-of-the-art graphics and ray tracing. This is what they should be paying attention to. Oh, and yeah, this is just curling, by the way. You know that winter sport that you see at the Olympics? Or is it even at the Olympics? I don't know, I'm not going to research it either. TimeSplitter swaps the stones out for monkeys, and you just got to throw them across the ice to get the best score. This sort of thing is what really makes a first-person shooter great. Rounding out challenge mode for the last time, there are just a few miscellaneous challenges. Cortez can't jump at first glance, doesn't look all that bad, but fuck me, it took me a while to get this one done. The floaty physics of the balls is just fucked, and the targets always felt like they were well too far away. Maybe I'm just shit, but I don't know, I think this one was trash. The new temporal uplink is neat I guess, but this challenge just isn't the one, and I'm grateful this wasn't the entire set. Saying that, TSUG, TimeSplitters Underground, also caused me to restart a few times. I really have to eat my words for wanting more TimeSplitters in my TimeSplitters game, as it seems like there's a whole game's worth of TimeSplitters here. Do they all just fucking hang out in this underground? Controlling gun turrets to kill TimeSplitters on paper is fine, but using two of them with the screen split down the middle really just broke my mind. I don't know why, man, it just messed me up. I eventually just let one turret die and focused on the other, because I don't know, I couldn't handle both at once. Maybe I need to get some new glasses. The last challenge I'll ever cover in this series was kind of a little underwhelming if I'm being honest. Plainly off his rocket features Captain Ash, back on that island from Scotland the Brave. You just shoot down a bunch of biplanes and that's it. And it's not really challenging at all. There's even the odd UFO, but that's really it. I shouldn't really complain as the last challenge in the first game was rancid. Oh, and the split screen nightmare from before. But I don't know, it's just... is that all? That was challenge mode. We rarely get anything like this in the current crop of AAA video games, and I really don't know how that makes me feel. Sure, they require dev time to get going, but it's a smart way to reuse assets, and for me it's better than adding New Game Plus. It also allowed those at Free Radical to get real creative at times, like the cat racing or the bloody monkey curling. And when you factor in all these maps were just in the story, or some of the multiplayer modes, well, I think it's a real good use of assets, and it adds a bunch more value to a game after you finally beat it. Arcade League returns a one last go around, and if you've seen my past 2 retrospectives on, well, TimeSplitters, well, you know what this mode is. But if you've not, then I'll briefly sum it up, and I mean briefly, as this mode was the devs basically simulating a bunch of multiplayer matches, but with bots. Some are straightforward, and some are a little gimmicky.
Headshot.
For example, Rocket 101 is simply deathmatch, but with rockets. Then you get Big Game Hunt, which is more gimmicky, as it's the player versus 8 deer hunters on the Siberian map with only a sniper.
Open head surgery. Headshot.
The third match is another deathmatch, but with dual-wielded flare guns, so you can imagine this one gets a little wild. The next 6 matches in Amateur League are almost a training ground for the player, to help them get their feet wet for what's to come, and it was good practice before facing your mates.
Open head surgery.
Most modes return. Shrink, which has the loser shrinking down to a tiny little guy, and the player in lead stay in normal size.
Killing spree.
There's Vampire, which encourages players to be really aggressive, with players needing to fight each other to keep their blood up. In this case the meter is blood, so you can get where the name comes from. Vampires need that blood.
Skewered.
And then there's Thief, a mode that encourages you to rob the player you've just killed. Kills mean nothing here, so you could just steal coins from kills that you've not even got.
Chimpicide.
Assault mode also returns, which behind Virus and Classic Deathmatch, more than holds its own is one of the best multiplayer modes in this game. It blows my mind this was included back in the box. As mainly a console scrub, you just didn't see this sort of extra mode in games. A couple of modes are axed, but they were really redundant when you look at the whole package. Future Perfect has such a killer lineup, leading to hours of extra fun.
Execution.
I've already put a fair few what ifs out there, but just imagine if this TimeSplitters was truly online. Yes, Future Perfect was online kind of, but not like we see today. Much like we see with wrestling games, I can imagine Free Radical putting in a player creation suite, where in this alternate universe we could have shared maps, and maybe put a new twist on some of the modes. Hell, even maybe a rudimentary character creation. You know when you choose the legs, torso and head? Something like that. And of course true online multiplayer would have been great too, especially Virus with a bunch of randoms, and of course, Assault mode.
The attackers have compromised the system core. Destroy the main generator.
Honorary League sees a return of Gretel, but she's been upgraded to Mark III now.
With a bit of lubrication, I'm ready for anything.
And kicks off this league with a game of zones versus the Marks. But she really is done dirty being lumbered in this deadweight group. Because, well, just look at whatever the fuck Hans is.
Hey, wanna be in my gang?
Dropping her in Virus would have been more her style. But then can robots even catch a virus? Well, of course you can, but this isn't Y2K. And Virus mode was already perfect in TimeSplitters too. But maybe a larger player count could have shaken things up. But it's pretty much the same as the last game, which is a good thing. With one initial player starting off being infected, and they've got to go and infect the rest before the time runs out.
Open head surgery.
Then there's also Bag Slag, which is just bag tag. But once you look at the characters involved, the name, it's a choice. I don't really hear anyone being called a slag anymore. Rounding off this league is another game of Shrink. Gladiator is here as well, just to make sure one player emerges as a true warrior, as they're the only one that can score points, whilst the rest try and claim that mantle. Then the best assault mode of either game is featured. What with it being set on the Mars prison map, this gave off Helm's Deep vibes back in the day, which I know seems silly now, but once the wall is breached, this just hits different.
Have reached the prison wall.
Finally we come to Elite League, which comes around fast this time. thanks to each league having less matches, making for less filler and more killer. Though I say this, but there's a true roadblock that rears its ugly head. Bag tag against some brain dead chimps isn't all that bad. Neither is it getting ganged up by 8 shoals, but fuck me, Astro Jock became the bane of my fucking life. So much so that I had to stop recording and keep grinding away at this until I could get the gold spot. I'm not ashamed to say this took me a few hours to get right. I'm just gonna blame the spaceport design. It might be a cop out, but this map is a one-way system of hell. And also don't bother using that piece of shit sci-fi shotgun. Just go to the grenade spawns and spam away. Front loaded sees the return of Christy Malone, but this time in a non-regulation uniform, and a full arsenal to boot. She's after Harry Tipper, so once again, it's going to be up to his woman, Kitten Celeste, to defend his honour. Sure, it's pretty silly, but you gotta love the commitment to the bit. And the character design here, one of Free Radical's best. Well, I know a bunch of pre and early teens thought so back in the day. Headshot! One last match goes old school. The Chinese chef has got to defend his turf against a ragtag bunch of rapscallions. This is Monkey Assault, which is deathmatch, but with added monkeys. And just because this is special, the monkeys are ninjas instead of the bog standard variety, because why not go out on something different? Killing spree! There is another opportunity to take it to Mr. Handy as Mr. Socky.
My friends call me Spoony Legs.
Not Socko, unfortunately.
Say hello to Mr. Socko!
Thankfully, most of the trophies in this final installment are relatively painless, with not even the challenges putting up much of a roadblock. An arcade league was cut back significantly, though Astro Jock was needlessly annoying. The dispersion gun is absolute trash, and I'd happily never use that thing again, until I inevitably play this game in another 5 years or so. Well, the story mode anyway, and maybe I can wrangle a few mates for some multiplayer. Miscellaneous challenges also added a sting to the end of that mode as well. The new temporal uplink is a neat mechanic, and works real well in the story. It's also a fine way to behead the undead, but to score points in a pseudo game of basketball whilst riding down a giant slow lift. Never again. I don't know, the physics just fell off. True to the name, Cortez can't jump. Who makes a basketball game mode without the player being able to jump? Isn't that like the whole point of basketball? But yeah, I guess the title gives it away. And sure, I got what I wished for when it came to TimeSplitters in TSUG TimeSplitters Underground. But the dual screen turret gimmick, that just broke my brain. I don't know, maybe other players didn't have trouble with this. Regardless, this isn't where I wanted the majority of my TimeSplitters in Future Perfect. And with that, I've covered every TimeSplitters game. And to this day, I'm still bummed we never got a 4th. And I'm sure so many other people are as well, even if the Embrace group couldn't see that. Who knows, one day we might get that TimeSplitters Rewind project. But that's a fan-made thing, and it's probably going to take years to come out still. These people are doing this on the side. They've got full-time jobs, I'm guessing.
Over there!
We should probably be grateful that these games got ported to modern hardware, especially TimeSplitters 1, which was locked to the PS2, but to have them all in one place for the first time is a treat. And just going back through this trilogy, it's a real peek back into another time, and how much the industry has changed in the past 20 years. Hell, all 3 of these games are only a couple of gigs each, which means I probably won't delete them off my PS5 anytime soon. In the time that all 3 of these games came out, it feels like the video game industry was really innovative. There was something new from so many genres all the time. Well, not all the time because we didn't get a game every week back then, but what I'm trying to say is devs didn't play it safe. Now it feels like all the big players are locked in an arms race to see who can get the better graphics. Or you know, we got those other games that become lifestyles, which isn't a problem in itself, but it's sucked in so many players, it's hard to see a new multiplayer game kick off. So even if we did get TimeSplitters 4, it would be really hard for it to get an audience. So it's probably really good that TimeSplitters ended when it did, because it really ended on a high. And could I see Cortez and crew really keep up with what came out in the next generation? Well, probably not, as the AAA FPS space was consumed by Call of Duty, and whatever dregs were left over was sucked into Battlefield. So really all I've got left is to say thanks to those at Free Radical. The guys that jumped over from Rare really put out a few bangers. And apart from that ending, which could have had a few minor tweaks, the story really landed for me. Multiplayer was brilliant, and I swear I played this until I put my PS2 away and got a 360. And then it was all about Gears of War and Halo 3. So with that, it's time to split. Thanks to anyone who's made it this far, and this is by far my longest video by a mile. If you could help a lad out, throw me a like or a sub. As for the next video, I'm going to be covering something a little different to the past few games. But for now, I've been Ben Roy, this has been the TimeSplitters Retrospective, and until next time, no more games.
Yeah, it's time to split.
Right, whatever.